About the agenda for today, as I said, we have a very tight ship. We have a plethora of incredibly interesting presentations, 10 minutes each, from a variety of different organizations. And then the questions and answers shall be kind of collected towards these Q&A sessions that will then allow asking questions to any of the previously presented presentations. Towards the end of the meeting, there's going to be a panel discussion, and here we have a very diverse panel coming from a variety of different backgrounds and organizations, and that's the kind of the high point then, where everything hopefully culminates and where the audience is recommended to engage in asking difficult questions and seeing how the panel members will react to those. And then we'll try to summarize everything and finish up at the 4-hour mark. So it is a stretch. It is incredibly packed with information and interesting stuff. And yeah, let's then just get going. So couple of words about the Metaverse Standards Forum, which is the organization that allows us to organize this event. So MSF is a neutral venue, and we actually assist standards organizations. So we do not engage in development of standards per se. We have a very broad global participation, and we drive meaningful results which gain a lot of wide visibility. And our approach for doing this is to be very pragmatic and bottom up, where the industry comes up with the presentations. The consortium was founded in 2022 and incorporated 2023. So it's a very, very new forum as such. And in terms of its reach, we have 2,600 member companies, and this gives a bit of idea what sort of backgrounds those companies come from. So there are various different backgrounds which are represented, from standards organizations to platforms to tools and engines, XR vendors, hardware vendors, wireless and networking, industrial and enterprise, universities and institutes, and a lot of advocacy groups as well. Check out the website if you're interested in more details on this. What the forum is working on, it has established several different working groups. We belong into the Volumetric Media Interoperability Working Group, which focuses on various volumetric media related efforts. But there's a lot of different activities going around these topics. And there's almost every day there's 1 or 2 calls taking place on any of these topics. Then a bit of background on Volumetric Media Interoperability Working Group. This is one of the newest working groups that has been established. And our intention is to study the interoperability of various standards and implementations that relate to volumetric media. We are not producing standards, as is common to all working groups in MSF. And we have about 90 individuals with diverse backgrounds as well, from SDOs to technology providers, platforms, devices and hardware vendors, startups, research institutes, and universities. So it's also quite nice and diverse background of organizations and companies. A bit of background for the town hall. So as I said, this is a new working group. And what we wanted to do before jumping into conclusions or anything, we wanted to build a better understanding on the ecosystem, players, solutions, and challenges. So we decided to host this town hall to discuss the state of volumetric media and standards within it. The expectation here today is to have a very honest and direct discussion to determine what we as an industry should focus on to develop a very healthy and enjoyable volumetric media ecosystem. And that said, we can then start with our guest speakers. We're already 1 minute ahead of time, so we're good. First up, we start with Sven Bliedung from Volucap. So Sven, over to you.
Yeah, my name is Sven Bliedung from der Heide. I'm the CEO of Volucap. I worked in the past a lot of feature film projects. So my background is more movie production, worked on movies like Avenger, Cloud Atlas, and mainly on stuff like fluid simulations, explosions, and heavy VFX things. So those were the things that really interested me like more than 10 years ago. So I worked on those things. Then 2013, basically, with the uprising technology of virtual reality, I shifted a bit my field because I thought it's cool to be not just working on a movie, but standing inside of a movie. So I moved more into other directions in terms of working with more 3D environment and capturing. So I looked more into the hardware world. And then, of course, with the uprising technology of virtual production with big LED screens, I shifted more and more over to also like not just working on software, but also working on hardware and creating camera systems to capture like environments, scanning objects was always like a nice thing, but actually like creating like human captures or dynamic scenes was like a big challenge. And we did also like some comparison with virtual production, for example. If you have like 150 persons in the background, for example, it's more than 1,600 trees, or about 6,600 trees that have to be growing for a year in terms of CO2, but also like the cost is quite much lower if you can use digital extras for the background instead of real persons. So we created like a catalog like a few years ago. We started working on it called 40 People, where you can basically then just get assets, buy them, put them into a shopping cart, like different extras, choose your software, and then you place them, and basically your empty scene becomes living full. So this is used by a lot of architects, but also like film feature productions have like background characters. It's like a fast access. But the good thing above that as well is that it's not just like 3D captures that you can buy, but it's all participants basically have agreed to sign agreements for AI usage, so we can use the data for training AI models and also share the data with other facilities for research for training AI models as well. Because I think this is like a big topic in the future as well to provide this kind of data. And this is how our studio looks like. So it's like a plain white room basically with a bunch of cameras. Nothing so special there, I would say. This is how it looks like when we do the capture. So in the circle in the middle is like the action volume, our default action volume. Then you have like a screen outside where you can just look and talk with the actor. And then this is the 3D data that comes out of it. And I think you're all aware about like volumetric videos, so I don't have to go too deep into like the core technologies behind that. And then you get the full like mesh and 3D Volucap out of it. One of the more like crazier things or rigs we have done was like for Matrix Resurrection, for example, when Lana Wachowski, the director, she came to our studio and she asked me, it's a cool stage that you have built. And this was in 2019. But can you build a Volucap stage underwater? This was really her first question to me. And I just asked when, and she told me like in 2.5 months, we need to be ready to shoot. So directly on the next day, actually, we jumped into the water. I mean, I'm not a professional diver or anything, but you have to get used to certain kind of elements. So here you see me prepping. This was really like the next day after I met Lana. So I had to breath through this little thing here. And then, of course, as you can imagine, working underwater is quite tedious, very slow. And getting like camera charts, measurements, and so on is also very tedious. And holding your breath in the beginning to get like static captures and so on. So a lot of new technologies involved and a lot of new skills. And so I think I became, as far as I understood, like the first Volucap human in history in 2019. So those were like the first 3D scans that came out of that. And after we did the first test, we said, okay, now we proved that it's working. So we created like a whole workshop, created different designs of underwater housings, did all the measurements, built more than 40 housings, set up the pool, fill it up with water. And here you see a full volumetric underwater stage 2.5 months later. So this was from the first test capture. This was the shot that was created with it. Quite impressive. The production loved it, actually. They want to use it more. So we signed contracts to build more bigger underwater systems. And then, of course, to 2020, COVID hit and everything was canceled for the underwater shooting. So we moved into more like directions of being more flexible and agile on the set during COVID times to capture the scene with the actors volumetrically. So the production has more flexibility and doesn't need to do much reshooting afterwards. So we gathered all the data simultaneously of doing like face replacements on the set or swapping camera angles. This, for example, was done like 2020 with NERF, which is like a pre-version of Gaussian splatting, I would say. So this was like the first time-consistent NERF, fully rendered with AI, basically with training data from the set. But with this, they could utilize it. Yeah, then we also built like a volumetric studio, which is portable. We patented like it's a carbon structure where we can put on very heavy stuff, but it's still very stiff and doesn't move so much. So this is like a portable system we can use. We know also in discussion with, for example, surgery rooms to set it up there to capture surgeries. And here you get an idea of the resolution. So if you zoom in, and this is just a digital zoom, no AI enhancement or anything. So that's why it gets a bit grainy in the end, but this is basically from full size the resolution of the system. So as mentioned earlier, our focus is really more like in the feature film domain and very, very high-end resolution domain, and not so much on just like augmented reality experiences or like smaller representations. Then of course, like swapping faces, always nice to do. So we worked on doing like volumetric deepfakes to replace faces of actors or let them do different like of lips or animations with them. And this technology also went into like partly of a live TV show that we did for Sky, where an older actor basically met a younger version of himself, and this was live broadcasted. So we created like a live deepfake system, which was also partly using our capture data for the training input. And you might have heard about Mickey 17. This movie will be released by beginning of next year. Here we also, I can't say so much about this movie, but at the moment at least, but here we utilized a lot of our capture tech as well. So we worked in England to do the scans and everything. As you can see, it's not really distinguishable which one is like the real one and which one is the fake one. But the movie, I think, will be quite cool when it comes out. Yeah, and then of course, as mentioned earlier, it's not just feature film, but also like medical training and so on. This, for example, is the case we did with the Charité in Berlin. So it's like medical training, and this is fully captured through the Quest 3 headset. And if you want to try it out, you can do that now. Actually, we released like a platform called Voluverse 3 months ago. It's on the Meta store. So if you have like one of those headsets, you can just log in, download on your headset, and then you have like multiple cases. On the left, you see the menu. So there's like different things, like even like also like yoga and workouts, or like comparison of motion capture versus volumetric capture. So there are a lot of experiences. So we have like those training scenarios for like Charité, but then we have also like older experiences that we have created like years ago, like basketball or news anchoring, presenting things, or a bit newer stuff like this guy here, Matthias Dandor. He won the Olympics in flat style, so you can also watch him there. So it's a bit like a tube site where you can have like different categories, and you can download the content on your headset and watch it, and it's all running standalone. Yeah, and of course, we're now extending the whole library with more and more stories. So we're now capturing also people from the Stasi area, like East-West, Berlin, and so on, then Black history, and also Holocaust survivors. We have actually now captured volumetrically more than 20 different Holocaust survivors with their stories to keep their stories alive. And we're now bringing more and more of this content into other experiences, but also into our Voluverse app, so people can experience like true volumetric video without a lot of technology or PC hardware, so they can just use a headset and everything is going. The system also support different codecs. So we have our own volumetric codec, but we're also supporting like the old Microsoft codec and also the codecs from Arcturus. So yeah, it's quite an open system to upload your own content and share it. But that's basically like a short little overview, a bit rushed through, but yeah, 10 minutes is not that much. Hopefully you understand that, and thanks for your patience, and yeah, hopefully let's stay in touch, and maybe you have some cool questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sven. Definitely interesting. I wonder what the next frontier for capture is now that the underwater is tackled. Maybe the moon.
Hopefully
Good.
space, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So let's continue with the presentations. I think next up we have Clement from 4D Views.
So yeah, this is Volumetric. So I'm Clément from the 4D Views company. So I'm the CTO, and so 4D Views has been created a long time ago in this domain. It was created in 2007 from a French research institute lab, And actually, I did my PhD before that. So it's been now 22 years that I'm doing volumetric job. So quite a long time, more than half of my life. And the goal that we had really is to try to establish volumetric and then to try to refine the technology in order to create really premium content, some very high quality, and helping content creators build a high quality content. So as you see, we provide the HoloSys and the HoloSys Plus system, which enables to capture whatever gets inside with props or without, and with the quality that we can have nowadays with volumetric capture that I'm sure you all know about. So I'm not going to give a list of everything of the project that our clients have done, it will be too long, but I just wanted to make some comments about the volumetric video things. So I think first of all, it's an usual process. You capture, you edit, you build your content, and you deliver. And what is the status now of that tool chain? Well, I would say the capture, it's already pretty mature. It's always advancing. There are new technologies. We've heard about NERV, Gaussian sampling, flattening. We see underwater capture, super high quality. So I would say, yeah, it's pretty good. Works pretty well. Of course, you need to encode the data. And again, as Sven mentioned, there's lots of different things. It works pretty well. You can go down to 1 megabit per second if you want. You can go with super high res. You can stream lots of feeds at the same time. So, of course, it's evolving. We started with MPEG 1 for movies, and then MPEG 2, and then you got MPEG 4. And then you had H.264, H.265, and it's still progressing. So it's always evolving, but it's already really usable. Of course, you distribute that. And here we got different solutions. You can do it yourself with some web hosting. You get some other companies that can provide that for you for streaming. So again, this is something that is doable. And Play, I mean, we've got lots of plugins for Unreal and Unity, and you got players, web players, and you got players for lots of things. So if I can summarize what I would say about volumetric is that it's matured. It's done. It's a job done, no? We can all go back to our desk and continue working. Well, maybe not so fast. I've talked here about volumetric video, but volumetric content is relatively unique. It lies between 2D videos and 3D videos and 3D games. And really, that sets it apart. In 2D videos, you have something which is really crafted by the director, a very good story, but it's a passive thing. You just play, play, pause, and that's all you do. So you just watch. In 3D games, it's the total opposite. You're totally immersed in your game. You are the actor in your game. You are doing your own story. And volumetric is kind of something that is in the between of the two of these things. And really, what I would call volumetric storytelling is really how to bring the ability to bridge the gap between the 2D video, where it's super storytelling, and 3D games, where you're the own player. And you have the whole spectrum from some will just say a volumetric video, you can just play it, and some will just go all the way. You need to fully interact with the volumetric data. And I think it's really important to understand that for us, volumetric now content goes beyond just videos. Here are 3 examples. One will have seen a video, but the first one on the left is an experience noir, which is on a headset, and you can experience the life of Claude Chauvin when she was arrested by cops and all of that, which is displayed in an AR situation. You got another project, the Kagami project, which was done in collaboration between Crescent in Japan and Tindram company, where they captured this very famous pianist. But the pianist is not just a video. Of course, you play it, but you got the piano, which is a simulation you have to add, and you have to add a lot of other elements so that the art piece is complete. And on the bottom right, here is a company called Virtua. They do some police and military training. And for them, the very important thing is they need to have some kind of animation graph. if you shoot in the leg, then the volumetric should do that. And if you shoot him in the chest, it should do that. And if you put back your gun, it should do another sequence. So this is a very, very dynamic, where you're kind of the user, more like 3D games, but with realism. So we've got this whole spectrum of different experiences, I would call that now, going from volumetric video, just play, to volumetric experiences, where you really have to build your content, and adding user interaction, having some CGI objects, environments, and of course include some volumetric videos, because if you want to bring the realism, that's probably what is going to be the best. Here's an example of this, the noir experience. So it was shot in different holosees, and all combining with some backgrounds and some AR, so some physical objects, some virtual objects, everything tracked. You can go yourself in the place, in the bus here. So the bench are real, the cops are unreal. Sometimes the bars are CG. There were some other physical objects. So it's really a blend between what is the reality, what is not the reality, and what looks like the reality. Another project that probably some of you have heard of is The Seventh Guest, where they replicated this old video game. And so those characters were shot in the holosees, and then Arcturus helped putting those characters into the movie. But here again, you have a kind of a blend between videos, game, where is the storytelling? You got a continuum here. Here are other examples of what artists have been able to do in 2D with volumetric. They've been able to do music clips, because this is the French movie where they added the person. This is on TV in order to recreate different scenes. Let me put back that video again. The point here is that this is 2D videos, but almost all of them would want them to be put into VR headset. And how do you change from this 2D content to the 3D content where the user would want at least some interaction? So for me, all this new content has got some technical impacts. The first one is, of course, now more and more artists are involved in the projects, and they use diverse software. Some use Blender, Cinema 4D, tools from the volumetric capture, like 4DFX, all those kind of tools. And so, of course, they need interoperability. But you also need to add and compute some additional data and encode those. You overheard about the Volucap feature, so that when you watch a video, the person looks at you. But there are some motion vectors to be added, some tracking if you want to know where the gun is shooting at, if you want to know where the chest of the person is. You have to add a lot of information to your content. And you want to ensure to have a user-friendly experience. You don't want to have some paper say, okay, I need to hire about 10 of the specialists in coding and 100 graphics and all of that. You want to have something very easy. So for me, if I look at all the content that our customers have been doing, we are shifting now more and more to storytelling, rather than just having the volumetric video as the focus point or just being played. Now the volumetric video, just the sequence, is only one piece of the puzzle. And it's a very rapidly changing landscape. Sven mentioned some things are just 1 or 2 years ago, and it's already evolving at a very fast pace. So I think this will continue, but I think it continues on going more and more in terms of building some higher content in terms of storytelling. And of course, the whole point is how we can encourage this kind of content creation, and how all the ecosystem can evolve towards that goal. That would be my end. I apologize because I won't be able to be in the Q&A, unfortunately, because I have a meeting after.
No worries. We can send you some question afterwards.
Sure.
I hope that's fine. Cool. All right. Thank you, Clément, again. Then why don't we move to XD Productions and Jacques and Philippe?
All right. So thank you for inviting us to this. It's a great honor for XD to share part of a rather intense period of our metaverse discoveries. 3D dance reconstruction is a scientific challenge since very long time, and I had a chance to conduct in Paris in 1997 the first videogrammetric test shooting based on photogrammetric algorithm of Mr. Olivier Faugeras, a famous French area scientist, researchers, which contributed to French Army missile guidance systems. Bringing more peaceful results, the technical success of this first test conducted me in 1998 to create XD Production, a startup dedicated to the new discipline of volumetric video. We survived since our early discoveries, and today XD remains both a private laboratory and a 3D animated image producer, working for TV, internet, and movies industries. Our presentation will be in two parts. The technical issue will be presented by Philippe Souchet, Technical Director of XD Production, and the business perspective will be my own short contribution at the end of our talk. So you can go, Philippe.
Okay. Hi to everybody. I'm going to present you the studio we are developing in the studio of Horsman. So we've been working on this studio for several years now, and I'm going to be very obvious in this presentation because you know very well what's going on. So we focused on a wider capturing area. So our studio is 15 meters in diameter and 5 meters high. Is composed of 64 cameras in 4K, each camera being linked to an acquisition computer with GPU to do the pre-processing. And we have 2 petabytes of storage to record the rushes. So you can see here some examples of what we are doing with that hardware. It's really standard volumetric capture. No big deal with what we're doing. It's a mix of voxel carving and photogrammetry, where we exploit the synchronized video 4K to extract silhouettes, and then send the origins of Easter eggs to computing servers to compute the 3D rendering and texture. So nothing abnormal here. This is the global ecosystem of our studio, which can do volumetric reconstruction and motion capture and standard green key compositing, and depends on the client to do whatever purpose it needs. So this is the global way the data are going from acquisition to computing servers, and then we've got a virtual control room to see in real time a previs of the 3D being reconstructed, or the motion capture, which gives the ability to the director, which you see what's displayed on the virtual control room, which gives the director the ability to judge the quality of what's being captured in real time, and to ask the actor to retake if necessary. So this virtual control room is composed of 50 inches touch screens, and with a direct network link to Unreal Engine to be able to previs also the sets which will be in the final products. We are working on a feature film, which will be a 90 minutes big screen movie. We shot in 4 years ago. We've been working through the pandemic, So I wanted to show you some challenging takes we had to do. It's a mix of sci-fi and heroic fantasy, so nothing very original in the script, but quite difficult shots to reconstruct in 3D. So we used the full extent of our capturing area between 7 meters and 10 meters diameter, depending on if we use volumetric capture or motion capture. And then we can add some extra computations with AI to improve lighting and precision of the 3D surfaces thanks to normal maps to help the relighting of some shots. Unfortunately, we don't have sound, but I can show you some. I have the sound myself, but I can show you some shots of the movie, which is advancing quite well and should be released next year, at the end of next year. So like we said, the visual impression is a mix of video game and standard cinematography. So I guess the very techy look helps to merge the 3D and the volumetric characters. Okay. So next is the other purpose or the other feature of our studio is motion capture, markerless motion capture. So we are able to extract the 2D skeletons on every point of view with the same rushes than the volumetric capture. And it's well known now that AI can labelize every articulation of a human being in 2D. So you just have to reconstruct the 3D position of the articulations from the different 2D positions. And that is an example of what we can get, whatever the clothes that the actors wear and on our 100 meter square area. But that helps because, as I mentioned in the slide before, it's an action movie. There are stunts, there are wide floating clothes, there are up to 10 actors on set. So it's quite many challenges in the same time to address. And this is our first, we are not used to the virtual reality headsets for now, but we are trying to put virtual worlds in headsets and populate them with some sequences of our movie, and to see how many, up to how many virtual characters we could have in the same time stream in real time in the headset. So we are to 12 characters right now. And that's pretty impressive, the result to be merged in this world with these realistic characters. But it's just the beginning. The idea was to test the capacities of a headset and how many characters we could put inside. So it's still under development, of course. We'll improve the quality and the number of person little by little. And I'm going to give the mic to Jacques because our first challenge is to go outdoors.
Yeah, the short presentation there is for the future, and I wanted to set up the free viewpoint concept, which means 3D capture and streaming with 3 viewpoints of view for internet users. So this challenge is based on 4 tasks. First is multi-axis capture, image, and sound. I insist on sound because, as you know, if you move your camera, you should move the sound related to the cameras. If the camera is virtual, how you will move the sound? So we install around the scene, the stage, outdoor, 24 masts supporting a box equipped with 4 mini 4K cameras, 16 microphones grouped in acoustic antennas, connected by fiber optic to a data center minibus parked nearby. So then we execute with the 26 computers and artificial intelligence, the real-time reconstruction and of the sound and the pictures, as everybody can do it here. But what is original is it transcribed in a realistic 3D image and soon to compress it and to stream it in real time. So we will establish a 3D streaming portal to make the live sequence available to internet users. And the codecs we are developing with InterDigital, the MPEG 3D company, and the codecs for image and sound ensure the online streaming and in 3D of any live show until 100 meters wide. And the major innovation in our app give to a virtual camera and virtual microphone, you can decide alone the position, the orientation, the focal lengths, and trajectories. And then you can therefore control with your fingertip on smartphone, tablets, headset, or glasses, your own point of view and hearing of a show. This will be ready next year, and we will test it and propose that to the market.
Very nice to hear. Thank you, Jacques. We need to move on to the next presentation. Sorry for cutting a little short. All right, appreciate it. Then next up we have Malek Ben Salem from Accenture. Malek, do you want to share something or?
Thank you, Lauri. Not yet. I'll just share in a few minutes. But first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak today. I do not have any lively, slides to share. Thanks for everybody who has presented so far. But what I wanted to share with you today is some of the market trends that Accenture sees. And by the way, I'm a managing director within Accenture for emerging technologies, and that covers basically, quantum, AI, Gen AI, but also the metaverse, which is why I've been invited by Lauri. I'd like to preamble my comments with the fact that most of what I'll be talking about or the stats that I will be presenting relate to the metaverse as a whole, as opposed to the volumetric media sector specifically. Now, Accenture believes that the metaverse will be, the next massive wave of digital transformation, and that it is for here and now, not just for tomorrow. We believe that every business will be a metaverse business. We've mentioned back in 2013 in our technology vision that every business will be a digital business. That was a surprise, not many other organizations shared that same belief with us back then. And here we are today where really every business is a digital business. And today we're saying that every business must be a metaverse business. every individual should be prepared to engage with the metaverse and be prepared to interact in these people-centric environments. We do estimate that the total market, the metaverse market, will reach $1.1 trillion. Sorry, $1 trillion by the end of 25 in terms of revenues. And that's basically roughly 4.2% of company revenues on average. We do see the metaverse, or we define it as a continuum of technologies covering, enhanced worlds and business models to aspects of business from, consumer experience to worker experience across the entire enterprise, going or spanning from reality to virtual and back, from 2D and 3D, and from and covering cloud, AI, and extended reality. So it's really a mix of technologies that we think of, and it's a continuum of experiences, if you will. In terms of business use cases that we see, they're really, we think that the metaverse will transform every aspect of the business. So how businesses interact with their customers, ways of doing work internally within an organization, how you would operate a business, what products are offered, or even how these products get produced and distributed. In terms of industries impacted, we think that several industries will be early adopters, but we do think that every industry will be involved eventually. The early adopters are retail, consumer products, financial services, health, industrial, and manufacturing sectors. Now, for extended reality, we specifically think that industries like healthcare, medtech, defense, aerospace, and manufacturing are the ones who will be the early adopters. There are a couple of figures that I'd like to share with you. So back in 2022, in April and May, we did conduct a survey of C-suite executives, 3,200 C-suite executives across all industries and globally, so not just in the US. Let me just share quickly my desktop. Okay, so I'll just move on then. What I'll mention is we've surveyed these 3,200 C-suite executives. 89% think that their business will be transformed by the metaverse. We've looked at all different industry sectors. It seems that the least, I don't want to say least important use cases, but maybe the ones that are delayed are digital twin use cases. But the ones that are most of interest are consumer services experiences and consumer product experiences. Those are the ones that are more look more promising across most of the sectors. Not across all sectors, but most of the sectors. And you can think of some sectors where, experiences within the enterprise, so ways of working, ways of interacting with other colleagues, ways of learning within the enterprise would be the most prominent use cases. And that's in particular for sectors like public service, for instance, like in industrial sectors, in chemicals, and in aerospace and defense. So those are things that are the trends that we see across industries. Specifically within the consumer experiences or use cases, we have surveyed, we've done another survey called the Accenture Consumer Pulse Survey, where we talk to individuals and ask them about use cases based on their age group. And not surprisingly, Gen Z and millennials are the ones who are more excited about immersive experiences. What's interesting is actually millennials are more open to these experiences than Gen Z, even though the difference is not that big in terms of percentages of interest. So typically for millennials, it would be, interest varies between 55% to 63%. For Gen Zs, it's a few percentage points lower. But it's interesting that millennials are the ones who are embracing these immersive experiences.
Definitely. That really tells where we should be targeting these volumetric experiences.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
sorry for cutting the presentation a little short. I think we're
No
at the top of the 10 minutes, so we'll need to move on. Thank you anyways.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Simon from Trickshot.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Fantastic. So yeah, I'm Simon. I'm the founder of Trickshot. I set up Trickshot. What Trickshot does is that we take the volumetric data or 3D markerless motion capture from sports, and we're fully focused on sports, and then we create different content and experiences from that for the fans. And I've decided I'm gonna give a completely biased presentation, and I'm gonna be biased in a couple of ways. I think if I call out my bias at the beginning, it might help. So I'm gonna talk only about sport and why I think everyone should just be focusing just on sport. I'll make that really clear. And then I'm also so that's the main bias that I'm going to kind of go across with, and I'll be focused on that because I think it's a really amazing opportunity. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I think sport is so important for the industry. If you think about technological advances in the past, like it was the first live television broadcast, it was for sport. Sport really does usually drive technology advances, and the reason it drive these kind of technological advances is because it has such an emotive connection to the fans and the people that are trying that want to experience it. It's such powerful responses that you get from the people when you get people closer to sport, and that kind of is a bit bared out in the stats as well. If you think about the top most watched US broadcasts of 2023. Lots of American footballs there. You can, if you look closely enough, there's a bit of political programming, and there's a Thanksgiving parade. But other than that, it's pretty much, I think 93 of the 100 are all sport, and that's what's kind of driving all those combined connections to the individual people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain some of the stuff that is already happening within sport and how 3D data can really power metaverse experiences, and then talk about volumetric and as that's a turning point. So I'm going to show you some markerless motion capture data. This is markerless motion capture data that we worked with the Australian Open, and it's just tracking 28 body points. Now, what's quite interesting is that the adoption of these data points is across all football clubs at the moment, all football leagues, all the top ones. They all have this tracking data put into place because they're using it for the offside animations. So if you jump back in here, see if it works. Oh, and when I say football, I mean European word of the term football is being used for these kind of offside animations. So it's already being used for that, but there's a whole host of different content and experiences that can be created. So here's an example of some work that we did with the Australian Open, where we took the markerless motion capture data. We powered different models for the players, different avatars, and then it meant that we can tell a different story about Anna Sabalenka, because she had a tiger tattoo on her arm, so when she scored the winning point, her tiger kind of appeared behind her. When you put it into a 3D environment, that's the kind of content that can be created. And also means, from a fan perspective, it means you can also put it into augmented reality, and we're really interested in how that can go into tabletop and how that can be used for analysis, how that can be used for situations where people say, oh, I could have scored that, why don't you put the headset on and see if you could have done the same action that you saw from the sport. And what we do as a company is that we take it, goes into our platform. It means that we can produce 2D content or 3D content and be able to export it out into those 3D worlds. Now, as a company, we've done a lot of work with Volumetric. You're probably looking at this thinking, oh, it's showing a lot of markerless motions stuff. It's, from a rights perspective, we can't show any of the volumetric work that we've done previously in the past. You might be able to find it if you search about, but yeah. But we do think that volumetric is the future, and in all my meetings I have, all the sports rights holders know that volumetric will eventually be the future. They know that they want to use volumetric because markerless motion capture, it will always look not as realistic. You won't have the facial expressions, you won't have the emotion, and that's what I was talking about at the beginning of this. Is when I was talking about sport, I was talking about the emotion that it can drive some people, and that's the reason you get that emotional response, is because you're connecting to the human that's scoring the winning touchdown or whatever else they're doing. The way to connect to them is through really good facial high resolution of their face, which you won't be able to get through markerless motion capture. So I've always been a really huge advocate of volumetric. I always, even though we do a lot of our work now in markerless motion capture, I've always been a huge advocate for volumetric, and I kind of want to use this time as a bit of a call to arms to everyone that's on this call to just have a think about sport and as an opportunity. It is probably the hardest thing for you guys to do, because you're out of your studios, you're out of your small confined areas where you're normally creating something, but and you have to do it live. And there's a lot of things about kind of what the turning point is for sport. A lot of people ask me that for volumetric, where it can get to. You'd need to get to live, less than 5 seconds delay. You'd have to have quality that's the same as broadcast. And the data would need to come in for it would need to be contextually aware. So you'd need skeleton tracking. You'd need to know not just that the mesh is doing something, you need to know that the mesh is also doing a specific throw, and all of that data comes through until you're one source of truth. So hopefully I've used my time to make you guys think about like how sport can work, and if you are interested in sport and some of the complexities, please do get in contact.
Amazing. Thanks, Simon. I have to say, you probably picked the most challenging use case for sure, with all the sunlights and fast movements, etc. Yeah, I respect.
But if you can do it for sport, then you can do it for anything. So
sure.
That's the challenge. Yeah. So yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, with that, then next up we have Ben from Evercoast.
Great. So hi, everybody. My name is Ben Nunez. I'm the CEO at Evercoast. Thrilled to be here and chat through what I think we've had some really unique opportunities to capture a bunch of different things in volumetric. I'll tell you a bit about Evercoast. We have developed an end-to-end volumetric platform. We're primarily a software company that licenses our software to other companies who want to build volumetric systems and capabilities in-house. We provide the software to be able to capture multi-camera, to reconstruct that data, to render it both locally and in the cloud, and then provide streaming platform, CDN-based compressed streaming out to lots of different endpoints. So we've tried to take what's been done on these really large Hollywood caliber stages and create something that is smaller scale, portable, very cost effective, something that can be deployed in a number of hours, but still generate quality that's commensurate with some of the use cases that we've particularly focused on. So it really is an end-to-end system. We've got Maverick Spark Capture software. We can do real-time live communication, live streaming of the data We can go sort of anywhere globally within 300 to 500 milliseconds, from camera lens to rendering inside of Unreal Engine or Unity. As I mentioned, we've got sort of local and cloud-based rendering. We've got a cross-platform capability with plugins for Unreal Engine, for Unity, for JavaScript, and other mechanisms of being able to use the data. And as I mentioned, we've got a compression and streaming platform to be able to get the data out. So we've been really focused on scale of capture, of users being able to consume the content and distribution. We've worked with a huge range of different customers. And, so we've been exposed to a lot. And so I'm going to focus our sort of presentation on, all the different things we've seen over the years. We also acquired DepthKit earlier this year, which some of you may know as another sort of long tail volumetric capture solution. They had a massive sort of base of customers that are all sort of rolled into the Evercoast base now. So I like to say that we have the largest base of volumetric customers in the world, and I do believe that's actually the case. And as I said, we've seen a lot. We started this process down at the Verizon 5G lab in Chelsea, where we took a conference room and in 2018 and turned it into a volumetric capture studio. From there, we saw just a huge range of different things. I mean, we saw, the very first person we demoed this to was Doug McMillan, who was the CEO of Walmart. And from there, we saw, everyone from the CIO of UPS to Pharrell. So we just kind of got exposed to a lot of different things down there and got to hear how people, have been talking, sort of how they talk about volumetric. And from there, we did the very first, someone mentioned Macy's Day Parade earlier. We did the very first sort of, stream into a volumetric stream from, a small scale studio in Los Angeles and New York into the Macy's Day Parade, so that people could be captured, and actually brought that into the NBC broadcast, both on television and on YouTube's via spherical video. So it was an interesting, sort of initial use case. We went into Ukraine and captured President Zelensky inside of Kyiv just 3 months into the war. So it was a pretty epic journey into Kyiv to capture him and get his message out. He was starting to struggle to sort of get differentiation and sort of how he delivered his messages. So being able to stream him out in augmented reality was a pretty amazing achievement. We went to, Toronto and set up on Drake's basketball court to be able to capture him in full 3D. He really just wanted his head for something specific. So it was a really sort of fun way of capturing an artist and working with them for a compelling use case. The kind of talking about so that's just kind of a highlight of some of the highlights of the things that we've done over the years and how our systems have been used. The way we see these kind of key industry markets laying out. I mean, in the end, we just kind of believe everything will be volumetric. It's a form of video, and as soon as we have sort of mainstream, accessibility of the format and the ability to, create this content at scale and consume it at scale, we think everything will be. And so, echoing what a lot of people have talked about in this meetup today is, sports broadcasting, entertainment and media, marketing and advertising, immersive education and training. All of it is important and crosses a lot of different industries and verticals, and thus the sort of way in which it's captured is super important. One of the sort of most compelling things that I'd seen was where Intel this past summer set up a couple of volumetric capture systems in Paris. They had captured over 3,000 people that kind of came through there, of which Olympic and Paralympic athletes were a part of it. They were able to take those assets and bring them into virtual broadcast systems so that the broadcasters could take this content and use it. They were able to distribute it out across a number of different sort of augmented reality and even just 2D desktop experiences. So a lot of different ways in which that content was created, and they were able to really get scale. I think it did quite well for them. Earlier this year, we went to, I think one of the key components of our system is the ability to go anywhere and set it up and pop it up and capture an artist wherever they are. So we could set this up in a hotel ballroom, capture, at Coachella, capture Charlie XCX for a branded experience with White Claw, another branded experience with The Bachelor from US television. I think it's just US, but Matt James, they did a companion shoot with RxBar, so a branded shoot with RxBar. So you could scan the QR code or, detect an RxBar and Matt would come up and tell you different things. We worked with Peyton Manning and Emmanuel Sanders to capture them for a game. This was also for Verizon. It was called the Game Winning Drive. We were able to capture them and bring them into using our edit suite, sort of merge those two assets together. We had to shoot them separately and bring them together into a single experience that could be played on mobile. Snickers, I captured another athlete, Stefan Diggs, for their rookie mistake, where he would, so it's kind of like a Magic 8-Ball experience where, again, we just captured his head. Just so that we could bubble it up and play it for consumers who wanted to ask different questions. ESPN did another game that they, we captured Artur Arkal. He's a ESPN host, primarily focused on hockey. So this was an augmented reality game that was created using our system to, allow users to play games, and he'll sort of pop in now and then and give snarky comments about what you're doing wrong. So really fun experience. We've seen a lot of sort of activations at different conferences. So this is at AT&T PAX West, and we've seen a bunch of these different things where people can come in and get exposed to the technology and get a capture that's done, and then bring that into an augmented reality experience. This was particularly this was at sort of Comic-Con style, gaming esports kind of conference last year. We've seen tourism and sort of organizations use the system to, this guy was a George Washington impersonator, so that in the town where this tourism board exists is in Dutchess County in New York. You could scan a QR code and pop them into on your phone. Super successful with that as well. This was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where using volumetric, they were able to sort of projection map onto the walls inside the Met and sort of display an artistic representation that lasted for activation for several months. Providence Hospital has done a bunch with just sort of small scale volumetric video for physical therapy, just being able to sort of take this kind of content, record this content, generate a lot of it, and then distribute this out to consumers via a mobile device so that they can see how to perform those kinds of exercises. Johns Hopkins School of Nursing, I saw someone else talking about sort of medical training. We think this is a big one, just the ability to be able to capture in a surgical room or have them come in and capture procedures to be able to learn more effectively. And kind of last one here, I've seen sort of a lot of usages for two-dimensional sort of production, just being able to create three-dimensional video and use it inside of two-dimensional, for distribution on television or other commercials. So really quite interesting use cases there. I'll kind of wrap up just by saying I think a lot of this is dependent upon the device that you're going to be consuming it on, whether it's a headset or a mobile TV, mobile or TV or desktop web. A lot of that'll drive sort of what the use case is, and vice versa. So I think there are benefits across the board for all of them. Thank you, and looking forward to Q&A.
Brilliant, thank you, Ben. I gotta say I'm blown away by the number of different and vastly different experiences that you showed. You're doing a perfect job educating the industry and doing all of us a favor. So thank you for that.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, so next up we have a KDDI slot. So and instead of KDDI, we have Hajime from Crescent Inc. Presenting.
By the way, first of all, thank you very much for KDDI-san, the Kawamura-san. It's give us the opportunity to talk in such a variable session. And also Nokia and Lauri-san, we just jumped into this session yesterday, and she kindly accepted us. And thank you very much. So today, my name is Kotani, and I'm the president of the Crescent. And today we are going to introduce our products called Volumetric. Yeah. And this Crescent, actually, Clément may admit that we are one of the first commercial volumetric capture studio. We starting, I wrote 2006, but actually 2007 maybe, sorry. And we are in Tokyo, Japan. And since then, we keep upgrading the 4D views system, and we are one of the latest 4D views products lined up in our studio. Thank you very much for 4D views. And we are very proud of working with many projects, like we work with Manabe Daito, Rhizomatic, with the Perfume, and Mikiko Sensei, so for South by Southwest, or Tindram Producing, Tagami over Sakamoto Village projects. And we have a lot of music PV, like Clément-san showed in Cherumiko, Easy Breezy, or Creepy Nuts, Autobocates, many things we are doing working with it. So also we are distributor of many volumetric system, like as I said, 4D view. And hello, Devin, we are also a distributor of Arcturus, and also Israel Tetabi, now name is Yom. So we long, years, we are working with the volumetrics industry. Yep. So now it's I like to introduce our product. It's called Volumetric. And the motivation of the Volumetric, why we are making is that, so we are, as you can, agree that 2D digital video is evolving to volumetrics video. So this means that the hierarchy of the 2D video, also the volumetrics video, should be somehow resemble. So like if we see overview the volumetrics video industry, like very high-end products, like Arri, Alexa, or Sony's Cinealta, these kind of high-end digital cinema camera should be like Holsys Plus, or Volucap, or MRCS. Those are the king of the products in the volumetrics. And also at holograms, they are very, very innovative, using cloud and AI. And this becomes digital video. It's like an iPhone. So in the middle between very high end and also iPhone type of the consumer products, which may call prosumer. That's like a Handycam or Action Cam or GoPro. Those kind of market now it's, I guess, not available. So we try to serve this market. That's why we started make it. So it has to be kind of prosumer, so affordable, affordable. And we are trying to sell Japan JPY 6 million yen. So it's also expensive. And also another thing that we think that what the volume is that it's a kind of next generation communication tool. It's now we are seeing like 2D Zoom, Teams, but this becomes to the 4D, means the volume. That was the preview point with the audio. And also, of course, it's a good friend of metaverse. So that's our intention. Okay, let's see experience what the volume is. You can see that the video. Then in the back, here's the screen. This is in the real time we are processing, and we put actually web access to the already website. So on the chat box. So if you click the chat box, then Windows or Android web browser opens. Then you can see my presentation in real time. maybe we are not so strong in the internet. We are preparing like 400 people's sheets, but maybe you can see 5-10 frames per second. Okay. So what this volume is spec? Okay, it's of course real-time processing, and minimum delay is like 40 milliseconds. Yeah, and we do a real-time mesh processing, and plus we have to see in a mobile, so we have to compress. So we compress the data from the mesh, the 45 megabps to 50 megabps. That's what you can see in the mobile, and also streaming is available like that. We're making our own AWS and streaming like now, no? And of course, Arcturus, HoloStream or HoloLive will be available, or it is available now. And of course, offline processing. And in order to make it better quality, you can use a HoloEdit of Arcturus. No? And next generation development we are now trying to is of course better resolution. You can see this is not enough. So also, because this is cameras, actually we are doing a motion capture a lot. So we have the distributor of Vicon, and we try to put markerless motion capture functions maybe next year. So you can choose either real-time volumetrics or real-time motion capture. And another thing, so we have to page system. Okay, yeah. So the system is very simple, 6 time-of-flight cameras, connecting the LAN cable, one LAN cable per camera, and with the data and the power, yeah. And also dedicated lightweighted pod, and we made it for, and it's very, very light, and make it small like this. And super simple calculation checkboard, and you can see in the PowerPoint checkable, and the on-prem local server. And show this one box, and we could say this ubiquitous volumetrics video, ubiquitous VV, So it's one carryable app, and it's all put together. Then you can just carry it. And also capture area is 4.4 and then 2.3, which is for Japan it's a little bit big, but for you guys it's very small. So we can capture 2 meter, and 2.2. And the consumption of the power is 1,000 watt, so not so much. So you can bring it to somewhere, and then we can compress. So maybe you can do a Starlink to up to the AWS. And also any experience, that's very important. Unity and Unreal we are doing to next year. And the Windows Android app, of course. iOS app, we tried now. And Web3D, it's 3D.js support. And Windows, iOS to 2025. That's next year. So something like that, And this is still we need improvement. We know this, but we try to make a positioning and hope we can do something collaboration with you guys. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Kotani, for the interesting demo.
Thank you.
All right, so now the first round of questions and answers. Do we have any questions on the chat that we need to address, or is there anyone on the online who would like to raise their question directly to the previous presenters? Why don't I get started then, and feel free to follow these ones. So Sven, if you're still in the call, you mentioned that you're pretty flexible when it comes to content distribution. Can you clarify a little more what type of formats that you're using to enable this interoperability between different streams of data and capture setups?
Yeah, I think the challenge is always a bit like you get different like capture systems which you need to compensate for. Like for metrics, for example, we had like basically all the cinema cameras available from Red to Panasonic to Arri. So we had all of them like in big arrays, and we tested them. And to work with all those different input devices, you need to create like a pipeline which can handle those data and those differences between this camera inputs. And then also, of course, regards the streaming or the distribution, the big challenge is if you or when we started, basically, we didn't have like our own distribution platform. So we always need to create an app, and then you need to update the app, and then you have like different platforms where you always need to constantly update it. And when we ended up with like having 5 apps in parallel, it was like kind of annoying to always do those things for all the platforms. And therefore, we created like this Voluverse app where basically everything comes together, which is more like organized like a content management system where you can just upload 3D data, like 3D objects, like volumetric videos. You can insert like websites and write text and whatever. And then in the VR headset, basically you see all your objects, you can align them, you can create your experiences, and you don't need to code anything. So it's a very fast way to distribute and show the content. And also we started this as an internal review tool to just review our data quick and easy with the headset. This is how we started with it, but then more and more people told us, yeah, please make it public because it's so usable. And now we actually putting more and more experience in it. And I think at the moment it's like 20 different experience in there, and we are adding more and more. But I think this is something which is crucial to give like a easy and fast access to people to see what's possible with volumetric video. So that's what we focused on creating the platform. And it's just released 3 months ago, so it's very early stage yet still, but we have more than 5,000 users actively per month. And last month I checked the data, it was more than 66 terabyte download just on VR headsets, which is quite massive amount of data.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yes. So we also working on optimizing, of course, compression. And if there are some other tech on the market which gives better compression, of course, or codecs, we happily to integrate them. So as mentioned earlier, like the codecs of Arcturus we support. We have our own codecs as well, and then the Microsoft codec. And if there's any like other codec which has an SDK, we get requests for, we can also implement them. So the idea is to be like having an open platform to fast and easily share volumetric videos and content.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So my next question would go to Philippe, if you're still there. So you mentioned about this 90-minute feature film where you were using volumetric video for the production. I presume that is made available to the users in 2D though.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. So what would it take to make this type of experiences, this 90-minute experience available via headsets?
90 minutes would be maybe quite long, but that's what I showed at the end with the gladiators in the Colosseum. It's a test to see if we can use the sequences we shot on the virtual headset, or at least in Unreal. So we're working on compressing the animation data and the mesh data, mixing Volucap and Mocap, I would say, to try to reduce the size of each stream. What you saw with the different gladiators, that was up to 20 characters in the arena. It represented one stream of data for each character, mixing mocap, mesh information and texture. So we're working on our own format, but we're very open to any advanced proceeding that would come and help us. But as Jacques said, we are working to go outwards and stream a football game in the end. So the goal is to reach 20 plus human beings in 3D on the phone or on the headset. So still much work to do.
What I would like to add to this issue, because I like your question, it's a very big challenge to propose a free viewpoint in the scene with several actors, and then it's possible right now. But you know, there is another question. When you do a film, when you tell a story, then you have thousands of scenes, of cuts in the use. To deliver a film which should be viewed interactively, you have to write all the sequence again to create sequences instead of shots, which gives you a very challenging period for the writers and the directors. So it changed a lot of things. And all what was invented by the movies using long sequences will be back because we will have to do it.
That's a very nice response or answer. I see one hand up. Ralph.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you, Lauri. Yeah, we heard, I think, from different content producers that, notably people recorded as volumetric content. I wonder if there's a common format for that, and how would this be exchanged with other players? Is there a common format, or is there just no today, and there is somewhere an arrangement to get it working? So what is the situation here? Thank you.
Maybe I can give a quick answer on that. We work with different standardization forms together, like working on such things like MPEG and so on, but there is no current like standard at all for volumetric video. And I think especially since volumetric video is changing so drastically. So I mean, in the beginning, everyone was focusing on point clouds. Then the focus was more on meshes with textures. Then now the focus went more to Gaussians, and now it's more going towards diffusion models. So basically, the tech is changing so fast that the standardization, I think, is not coming. It's not fast enough to get a standard format out of it. And that's like, I think, one of the challenges I see with creating a standard at the moment, because the tech is so fast in terms of evolving and rendering technology. So there's no standard yet. And maybe we will have multiple different standards in the future, but it's still something on the go. So everyone has created their own kind of implementations and standards to play back the content.
That's why we are here today.
All right, very good. Then we have a question for Ben from Andres. Maybe I will just read it from the chat directly. So, as I am in Latin America and we have some low-tech, low connectivity conditions, I am very interested in the filming setting based on femtobolts, but also in the deployment. Do you consider this kind of technology makes a lighter output? Not considering cinematic context, but education and publicity. So I guess any perspective on using femtobolt type of devices?
Yeah, so our software can use just about any camera. We can use RealSense cameras, femto, Orbit cameras. We're so deprecating in the Azure Connects, but then even just any two-dimensional color camera. And so ultimately, I think what drives the distribution capabilities and sort of what might drive data rates down is how you reconstruct and compress that data, and not so much what the input is. Certainly, if you're going to be capturing with 4K or higher resolution color sensors, and you want to keep it at that resolution, there are challenges in doing so. But the actual reconstruction of the data, how many triangles if you're using meshes, or how many splats if you're using Gaussians, that type of reconstruction technique can be dialed up and down in our platform, and you can sort of specify kind of where you want it to go, and if you want it to be for a mobile phone and low connectivity situations, that I think ends up being something that can be used, sort of encoded when you actually go to distribute the content. So we certainly love the sort of lower cost cameras and the ability to actually do that, because it unlocks, just kind of a lot of different use cases and situations where customers don't have huge budgets, and you want to create a lot of content with it. So we do like those cameras and others in that field, but just about any camera you can record with our platform, and that's just about how you encode it and reconstruct it.
Yep, cool. Thank you very much. Any other questions online? If not, then I have a tricky, slightly related to the question that, there was this question for Simon, but unfortunately Simon already had to drop out, if I'm not mistaken. But that is an interesting question.
I'm here.
On the. Oh, you're still here. Great, brilliant. Ben, go ahead. What type of latencies are you talking about?
Yeah, sorry. Latency with markerless motion capture, we've worked with providers. So we kind of take it and then create the experience, but we've worked with providers that are well under the 5 seconds. So normally in broadcast sports, so you want it less than 5 seconds. And they've worked well under, I've seen kind of 1 to 2 seconds for the markerless data coming through. Actually, we've worked with a Volucap supplier as well that has done it in that kind of time as well in the past. So we like it is we do see it as possible. It's just about getting all of those metrics up at the same time.
Brilliant. That's a good response. That brings another slightly related question that I had on my mind regarding live production. So is that a thing that we can expect to see sometime in the future? I know 5-second latency is something, but like really real-time-ish scenarios, how far is that?
I can jump in there. Lauri. We can currently live stream this data anywhere in the world globally within 300 to 500 milliseconds. So the ability to actually conduct a one-to-one interview, anywhere in the world is something that we focused on and have been able to demonstrate really now for the past couple of years. Telefonica actually first demoed this at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona a couple of years ago. We've since been improving on that rather rapidly and substantially. So it is absolutely a capability that we have today, and I think others I'm sure are working on it. The scale and size of the sort of volume will and how many people and those kinds of things can will determine sort of latency and from the camera lens to the time you actually sort of render it inside of Unreal, and what else might be going on in Unreal, and those kinds of things can impact latency. But we can do it in a way that's fast enough to for live broadcast for two-way communication.
All right, cool. Thanks, Ben, for taking the bullet.
Sure.
We have one more question, maybe Ralph. That's the last one for this session, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and we need to move on.
Very quick one. It's for Simon. That I think this is really interesting to play back. For example, what is happening on a soccer field, for example. And I understood that you capture the body movements, but it was not so clear to me if you can also really already capture facial expressions. That I think you said that they are important. So what is the status on that? Can really kind of the clear face expressions been seen of the players, for example?
So great question, Ralph. So I think so there's two types of data capture that you can do within sports. So you've got markerless motion capture that's already there. So that's already being captured by all the different sports fields have all got anywhere between 12 to 30 cameras around the stadium that are capturing it. They're capturing 28 body parts. They're not capturing the facial expressions at the moment, because for officiating and performance metrics, there's no need to capture facial expressions. For me, that wants to make nice videos and good experience for fans, I would love the facial expressions, but I think that they could be kind of added in kind of artificially along in the journey. The solve on this is everyone that's here on this call today, all the volumetric people, because then you will be able to get all the detail and the facial expressions as sport moves towards volumetric over markerless motion capture. Like we've seen some really encouraging signs from people that have used volumetric within sport, within like the actual live arena rather than within a studio. But we're away off full adoption yet.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. All right, let's move on with the agenda. So we have our next bunch of presentations focusing on focusing on volumetric media standards landscape. So first up, Volumetric Format Association. Ian, are you ready?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thanks, Lauri. Well, welcome everyone, and good to see everyone attending, and certainly a lot of interesting questions so far. I'm going to go through and talk a bit about the Volumetric Format Association, and just for background, I work for NVIDIA, who we are a part of the Volumetric Format Association. So if you could jump to the next slide, Lauri, that's great. So what's the goal of the Volumetric Format Association? Well, like a lot of the kind of questions and comments and that today is really the goal is to try to drive the development of volumetric video as the next revolution for content creation. and editing 3D content, distribution of 3D content, and creating entirely new ways to tell stories and communicate with each other, which I think is a sort of a very similar and aligned kind of statement to what many of the previous presenters have sort of highlighted as well. And kind of, I just put a couple of slides, a couple of pictures in there from member companies of the Volumetric Format Association. If we jump to the next slide, Lauri, that would be great. So these, this is who comprises the Volumetric Format Association. Ourselves, NVIDIA, Canon, Kino, Red, Zeiss, Sony, Trickshot, Skyrim, MediaPro, Fearless Productions, Wild Capture, and Magic Box. We have three different categories or tiers of membership. One's at the enterprise level, production level, which is sort of much more people actually using and pulling the technologies together, as well as the community level, which is really to allow a wider net of people to make contributions. Next slide, Lauri, that would be great. The use cases that we're targeting, I think, you know, we all know these have been covered in the existing presentations. However, one that, to Simon's point, one that sort of firmly grounds us at the VFA is the live sports. That's kind of being able to solve that would be a tipping point, we think, to actually sort of increase the adoption and presence of volumetric video. So we do tend to think a lot about that, what it would be to be able to allow volumetric to be a normal, typical production method for existing, or for volumetric video, like it is for existing 2D video. Next slide, Lauri. So as a result, the scope of what we're working on at the VFA spans from, you know, capture, processing, compress, and playback. So it spans the entire pipeline. And, you know, I'll touch on some of the areas we're working on in a moment. Just want to highlight that we do have some specifications published. The contents are visible to the public, but the actual materials itself is effectively behind is available to members only. But the specification version 1.1 includes a couple of different methods to represent volumetric data, and really is focused on the encoding and delivery to the client. So the sort of the compress and playback part of this diagram. We also have some white papers that we put together with some information on capture stages, camera array design, and video capture setup. So they're the existing publications that we have. If we jump to the next slide, Lauri. So one of the areas that we're currently working on is what we call the VFA specification 2.0. This is really extending the existing specification, and I've drawn the red outline for the overall flow on the right. This is, again, building on kind of being able to deliver client experiences and volumetric client experiences. And one of the key things that we want to introduce with the 2.0 specification is a server-side rendering, which there was, you know, mentions of Gaussian splats and other representation types that it's certainly possible to effectively perform the heavy lifting for rendering on cloud-hosted servers and deliver a low latency experience. And that might be, we want to look at being able to extend the ways of encoding content and deliver that to include that paradigm. And that would have a variety of endpoints. I think most of these have sort of been touched on in some of the previous presentations, but, you know, obviously HMDs, but, you know, XR glasses, tablets, phones, TV. And actually, it was also mentioned earlier as well, the web browser. I mean, in some ways, that being able to view volumetric content on 2D viewing technologies is an important case. And then another thing that we want to think a little bit about in that specification is sort of minimum application experience. And what that really means is sort of the things that you can do and interact. And again, some of the previous presentations have touched on that, as to actually what new ways of viewing the content does volumetric bring, and what are people going to expect? We're all used to the paradigms on play, pause, rewind, fast forward, things like that. What are those for volumetric experiences? And then this specification, the existing specification builds on a bunch of standards, but another thing that we want to include in the 2.0 version is the inclusion of the MPEG VPCC, essentially as an alternative encoding method and profile within it. And then actually I'll just also call out that with the server-side rendering, that things like an OpenXR, the Kronos OpenXR standard, or certainly seems to provide ways of allowing a sort of standard interface between a rendering application and a streaming application. So we're looking to include that as well. Next slide, Lauri. So other work that we're looking at with ongoing work, we want to create the concept of a capture specification, but maybe description would be a better way. That this would be a way of a flexible and extensible format stroke description to describe volumetric capture configurations, as well as all associated data and metadata necessary for downstream processing. So this, this would allow a capture stage or to be able to be described, and really contains a format and description to sort of package all the data and metadata such that something downstream could make sense of that huge blob of data, which is, as mentioned, often in the terabytes. It was sort of the specification will be kind of a human and machine readable JSON format. We want to support inside out, outside in, offline, and live capture. I guess that's the goal. But then having this kind of specification, it seems like it would also provide the ability to do things like, verify the integrity of a database, of a capture database, which if they're moved around or between places, maybe moving up to the cloud and things like that, there's be ways of being able to verify the data. As well as also another frequent thing is that I'm sure many of the previous companies giving presentations, you may capture so many minutes on a stage, but really it's only the kind of middle 2 minutes or something like that. So having a way of describing the data would potentially allow tools and utilities to go in and extract kind of relevant subsets. So that's the capture specification. Another thing that we're working on, next slide, is a processing pipeline description. And this is really trying to describe what the processing stages might be, and from capture through processing right the way to encode, and even including encode maybe. And really it's sort of thinking it's sort of a node-based graph description of the processing pipeline. We definitely want to support multiple streams because, as mentioned, there are lots of cameras going on here, and there also may be, multiple streams and parallel processing is an important part of being able to describe this, which likewise, also the concept of flow control and status within each of the stages. But a key point that we want to make sure in this description is we don't want to get into the details of what's happening in processing stages. So we don't want to touch on any areas of intellectual property and, cause any into IP to be exposed when it doesn't need to be. It's not really important. What's important is the inputs and outputs and the connectivity. And then version 1, we're probably not looking at this as being a programmatic kind of way of invoking a pipeline, really more a descriptive way. But in the longer term, maybe as sort of things settle down a bit, maybe there is a kind of programmatic aspect to it. And next slide, Lauri. So in addition to the capture spec and the processing spec and version 2,
and we need to wrap it up very quickly.
Okay. That's perfect timing. So we're working on some other things. Best practices white paper, and a couple of those, leveraging existing infrastructure, particularly with respect to sports. There's a lot of existing video capture infrastructure, and we want to, look at ways of leveraging that as much as possible. And then, as the question was raised earlier, assessing quality and really, I think Simon touched on it, what would define broadcast quality for volumetric capture, and is that the tipping point to be able to deliver sports? And that's it, I think, Lauri.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ian. And I bet there will be more questions during the questions and answers slot. Next up, we have MPEG with Lou and Marius. And I've understood that Lou will start.
So thank you very much to invite me to attend this town hall on the volumetric media. So I would like to introduce the volumetric media standards from MPEG Video Coding Working Group. I'm Liu from Zhejiang University, the convener of MPEG Video Coding Working Group. So who are we? MPEG Video Coding Working Group is one of the working groups of ISO IEC JTC1 SC29 on the coding of audio, picture, multimedia, and hypermedia information. So this working group is a working group develops coding and compression of digital representations and the descriptions of moving pictures, including volumetric visual media. So this slides provides the list of the recent activities in MPEG video coding working group. So the essential video coding, low complexity enhancement video coding, these are the standards for traditional 2D video coding. But they may also be used for the compression of volumetric video. And neural network compression normally for AI technologies, but may also be used for AI-related volumetric media representation. And the major standards developed in MPEG video coding working group for the volumetric media is the MPEG immersive video coding. And we are also working on the coding standards for AI machines. We have some exploration experiments on the future representations of volumetric media. I will introduce that later. So the major standard we developed in this working group for the immersive media is the MPEG immersive video, which also named as MIF. The second edition, the draft international standard already issued in this July. And to provide an idea about what this standard is that the input to the encoder could be the multi-view videos of the decoding of the bit stream. You may render the any views in the viewing zone with 6 degree of freedom. So you may have the experience of the 3D space by using the MIF content. Actually, the MIF have different operation modes. You may either with only the texture, multi-view texture, or with depth maps. And if you want to have a high coding efficiency, you may reduce the redundancies between views. So the Atlas mode should be used. And all the texture and the geometry informations can be captured, can be packed into one video frame. And recently, the simpler MPI mode is also supported in the second edition of the standard. Some features of the MIF standard.
Sorry, Lou, I think we're getting over the 5-minute mark. I think we need to pass the baton for Marius.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to emphasize on the feature of the MIF is that we reuse the 2D video codec in the compression of immersive video. And we also share the high-level syntax structure design with V3C. And for the future of the compression of visual volumetric visual media, we are working on the lenslet video coding and also the Gaussian splatting compression. So I skip this. Actually, the Gaussian splat coding is a joint activity together with WG7. So I believe Marius will introduce more about that. Before I close my presentation, the last thing I would like to mention is that standards such as the neural network compression may also be used for the compression of representation of volumetric media. So let's conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Lou. All right, let's hand it over to Marius.
And I can see myself, so I suppose you all can all see me. Okay, good. So I'm trying to do quick presentation because I'm already at -1 minute. So with some key highlights in 3D graphics and haptics compression in MPEG. Yeah, as was mentioned before, is not because there are no yet standards, but they are not so known. So I will try to go quickly in what we are doing in MPEG for compressing this kind of new media, new and in the same time quite old media. We saw people working for 20 years on it. So the first representation, the easiest one, is point cloud. But the fact that it's easy is probably the only good aspect of point cloud, because everything else is not so good. First is that it's very heavy. For having quite simple content, you have millions of points, and if you don't compress them, you can not do too much with them. So compression is a must for sure. Otherwise, we cannot even think about people using this kind of content. And the second bad thing is that this representation is not very compression friendly. So usually the objects are representing only the surface. The neighbors are not so easy to find. Of course, compute distances is fine, but it's not as easy as in a 2D space. You all know that. Okay, we started the work on point cloud compression years ago. I will not go in all the details, but the only thing that is interesting here is that there are two flavors. One is called video-based point cloud compression, and is using video compression as a backbone, and is on top of that. And the second one is geometry-based point cloud compression. Why there are two? Because point clouds are different in the sense that we have dense point clouds for some kind of content, and this was what we saw previously. In general, people were referring here in dense point cloud, but also there are sparse ones that I will highlight later on. In terms of standardization, VPCC is already there, was published in 2020, so it's available. People can try to use it. Some companies and some organizations already build application formats on top of it. And GPCC, we had the first version in 2021, and we are working now on the second version. So few highlights why video-based point cloud compression is using video is simply because it's cutting the 3D object into 2D planes, project them into the canvases, and then use video coding. As simple as it is. Of course, life is not easy. It's not as simple as it looks. You have to properly cut, properly project, properly packetize to have a good way to use the video ecosystem. But the good part here is that this video ecosystem is already in place. So we have the encoders are there, the streamers are there, everything is there. So to have a direct usage of this video ecosystem. In terms of bit rates, these are some numbers from 2020. Yeah, very quite good quality. We have it in few megabits per second. As I mentioned, not all the point clouds are dense. There are also some sparse ones. This is a domain that will be probably even be bigger than entertainment because it's about automotive assistant driving, and probably in a few years all the cars will have that on board. The technology is different. I will not, of course, go in the details. And in terms of bit rates, here for 16 megabits per sequence is high quality, especially for insurances and stuff like that. Okay, point cloud is there, available. People can start playing with it. We also have an exploration on AI. I will not go in details, but the only important thing here to know is that we start a new standard on AI. And actually what is using AI is only the geometry, because in addition to compress, maybe there are some operations in the geometry that we can do, like feature extraction, like classification, that we can do directly in the compressed domain. And the traditional coding is preserved for the attributes. Good, point cloud was there, but as was mentioned, point cloud is not the most appropriate way to represent 3D graphics content, so mesh is the one. So we also have a standard we are developing a standard for what is called dynamic mesh. Of course, it's different from animated mesh because it's not only the geometry that is varying, but also the connectivity is varying, the textures and so on. So you all know this. And you also these kind of examples. So in terms of standardization, where we started in 2021 with the call for proposal, and then there is some submissions that were there. We select the winner, and the winner has the same beauty as for the video based point cloud compression, is that it is reusing video codecs. And how he's doing that is projecting this time not on a cube like the points, but on a coarse mesh. So there is subdivisions, levels, and then we have a coarse mesh that will be simply encoded by any traditional mesh coding algorithm. And all the differences between this coarse mesh and the very refined one are projected in 2D planes and encoded in video. What is to maintain from here is the video ecosystem can be reused. How good it is practically very good, and that is the answer for the core proposal, and it becomes better than since then. So currently is the best codec for dynamic mesh compression that exists on not only on the market but in the research domain as well. Okay, as was mentioned by Lou, and I will finalize with this part, we have an exploration experiments on Gaussian splatting. Of course, this is a moving target, but you know that standards take time to be done. So we already started this exploration with a video group jointly, and the idea is to use some existing technology or some new technology, but mainly Gaussian splats as a representation is a set of points plus some attributes, nothing more than that. So even the straightforward adaptation of what exists today in MPEG can do the job. I will not go in details because you probably know all this, but Gaussian splatting is new because it's new, but actually it's not new. Okay, so in conclusion, MPEG 3DG was developing in the last decades a set of technologies for representing, especially in compressed form, various types of assets. The standard is there, So of course, it's not so easy to use the standard because it's quite complex. But I put here a link to the GitHub because there are also some public repositories that everybody can use and test. So I know that I don't have too much time. I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Marius. I didn't want to stop you because you were doing an excellent job going through this much information in such a short time in -1 minute. So without further ado, let's jump to the next one to avoid any further loss of time. Arcturus, Devin, would you be the next one kindly?
All right. So I want to talk today about a codec we've developed at Arcturus called Accelerated Volumetric Video, or AVV for short. So first, a look at it. This is a real-time demo of AVV. In this scene, there's 70 independent volumetric video streams playing through, and it's rendered on commodity graphics hardware. This is a pre-recorded version of that, but I can send the demo around if you'd like to see it. So what is AVV? So first, it allows for a very high level of detail, up to 16K textures, up to millions of verts. It's very performant. You can put hundreds of characters on a virtual production stage. You can do 6 characters in 2 milliseconds on a Quest 2. It's got detail management in progressive LODs. It does selective decimation. Talk about that more in a minute. And it also supports motion vectors and temporal anti-aliasing in modern engines. So with this codec, we want to do a few things differently than what the other codecs out there have been doing, including our previous codec OMS and the SVF codec from MRCS. The first one is that all the decode should happen on the GPU so that we can scale. And so that we can manage I/O on the system. The second is that video decoding introduces a lot of complexity, a lot of challenges around hardware bottlenecks, and we want to replace that with something tailor-made for volumetric video. So let's compare a sort of naive codec where we've got a big file on disk, takes a long time to move over the bus to the GPU, to the CPU. You don't do much there and you move it over to the GPU, or maybe you do DMA to the GPU. It decodes pretty fast, but so much is moving over I/O that it's going to take a long time. Anyway, sort of standard codecs that are out there now, they're small on disk, they move short time on the bus to the CPU, they're decoded, which takes some time due to the run length or arithmetic encodings that are being used. And then that has to move over the bus to the GPU where the rest of the decode happens to the video content. What we're doing with AVV is it's a little bit bigger on the disk. It moves over the bus quickly to the CPU. Very little happens there. It moves over the bus to the GPU, and all the decode happens on the GPU. Practically speaking, the relative scales is sort of like 1/50th of a more naive encoding. What's going on the CPU? Basically, on the sim thread, you're queuing up reads for the next frame. On the render thread, you're decoding the last frame, and on the disk read thread, you're reading the queued reads. So that's sort of the layout of the threaded behavior. In terms of the actual performance of sort of like standard codecs of today versus AVV on one commodity hardware computer, current generation codec OMS dropped off under 100 FPS after about 4 players were playing at 2K by 2K texture detail, and AVV hit around 60. So what's going on in the format? So it's composed of mesh streams and texture streams. The mesh streams composed of segments. Each segment has a set of fixed elements that are the same across that segment and a set of varying elements that vary per frame. A segment has sort of a fixed index buffer, a fixed UV layout, fixed block layout, and the mesh data has per frame vertex color and normals. Texture streams composed of 4 layers. So you've got the per vertex layer that we just talked about. And then you've got quarter, half, and full resolution texture block data that's sparse. I'll try to illustrate what that looks like here in a second. But the vertex color is the sort of lowest MIP of the data. You could think of it that way. And it holds both chroma and luma data. And then the block data is all luminance data, and they're stored as BC4 blocks at quarter, half, and full resolution in a sparse stream. And those are written into UV space by the compute decoder, each frame. I'll show you what that looks like here. So for this final image, you can imagine starting with your vertex colors. You've got this quite aliased data, but it gets the broad strokes in place. Then you've got your quarter resolution blocks, which sort of make up the areas of the texture where the detail contrast matters, but a little bit less. The half resolution blocks and the full resolution blocks. And those together, all combined, give you your final. In terms of encoding, first you're cleaning meshes, stabilizing the meshes into sequences of common topology, transferring the normals from the original mesh, encoding each segment. And then for the textures, you're transferring the textures into the new stabilized segments. And you're doing some analysis on those textures to figure out which, is this better represented as a quarter, half, or vertex color type of arrangement. That all gets written out into the AVV file. Then all this can be used for LODing at runtime. Because of the way the container format works, we not only don't render anything other than the vertex colors when things are in distance, but we also don't even load them off disk. So you're getting much, much lower IO for data in the distance. And then we decide, which features of the renderer to use depending on the distance of the content to the viewer. Here's what that looks like in a commercial game. This is The Seventh Guest VR, which was created by Vertigo Games with capture by 40 views. And this is all running, very quickly on a Quest 2. All right. That's it. Thanks so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Devin. First one to keep time. Appreciate that. Then let's move to the next one. So up next, it's from DBB, Paul Higgs, and I will take over the screen sharing.
Okay,
all
great.
right.
Thanks, Lauri. Thanks everybody for having us here today. I don't know how many of you know DVB. We're the Digital Video Broadcast Project, and it's a group that's been around for about 30 years, working mostly on television standards. And you might think that's a bit strange that a TV group is here, but we always try to look in DVB at what's on the horizon and what's coming up next, and how we can bring new technologies to the broadcast market. And really what that means is the mass market and the large scale audience. So those are the sorts of things we tend to look at in DVB. Can you go to the next slide, Lauri? So sort of late in 2022, early 2023, we started looking and saying, what is next in the space of video? And for a long time, or at least during the pandemic and a little bit before it, we were looking at how we evolve the video technologies in terms of resolution, spatial resolution, temporal resolution, and how we evolve audio in terms of moving from channel-based audio to next generation object-based audio. And so we thought, let's take a look as well and see what's going on in the industry in terms of moving beyond that sort of rectangular representation that we've been so good at giving to users, sometimes with a degree of interactivity, more often than not, just putting up those rectangular frames in their faces and making them watch what we give them. And so we thought, let's look beyond 2D. Let's look at volumetric video as a way to explore this three-dimensional video content and to try to understand what the role is in the television space. Can you go on? So we spent about a year, and in that time, what DVB does when it's something we're not sure we're going to work on, we create something called a study mission. And so I led the study mission, and there was probably about 10 or 12 participants. Some of them are here today, some of them are even presenting here today, which is good to see. And we were looking at the different technologies that we need to bring in a solution, if you like, for volumetric video. We published this study mission report. It's available for download. There's a very short one-page article there as well, looking at what we've done here before, because DVB is not, volumetric video isn't new for DVB. We spent a bit of time in the 2010s working on virtual reality and looking at the role that virtual reality could have in an entertainment space and a broadcast oriented or a broadcast led entertainment space. Can you go on, please? So what do we do? Looking at this holistically, we said we need to understand what's the overview? What is volumetric video? Because while a lot of us who have worked in it with technologies, whether they be television or three-dimensional technologies, have a good idea, we need to be able to give that information to the mass market as well. So we tried to have a look then and say, what are the parts that people work with and what are they familiar with? And I think we've seen some of those today as well in the previous presentations. What do we do with capture? What are the capture systems that we can use and what's being used today to do successful acquisition of volumetric assets? And then what do we do with that data? These are both things I think we've seen today in interesting ways. Then, of course, now we've got it, we've spent a lot of time and effort producing that volumetric experience. How do we deliver it to our end users? Because that's really who we're here to service with this kind of technology and these kind of contents. And then, of course, this is great, but how do we bring it all together? How do we make it into a workflow? What are the steps that are involved? And we tried to then identify here what the interaction points are, because these are places where we think that the industry can work on standards to build these pipelines for producing and delivering volumetric experiences. Can you go on? So it's not all about what we have done. A few of us went and had a look to say what's gone on in the industry. And again, DVB's dabbled with this, as I said before. We've done a bit of work with virtual reality. You might remember the joys of 3D television or the headaches that came with it. But we still want to look at those things. Although those technologies themselves may not have been massively successful in 360 video and 3D TV, there are a lot of aspects of those that we think we can bring forward into to volumetric experiences. We went and had a look around what people were doing at different shows, what innovation people were showcasing, and what sort of content they're actually bringing to consumers as well, because we think that's a bit of a shift. We can't just take the regular television content and put it onto a volumetric domain. We're seeing, again, some of the examples we saw earlier today have sports that are being brought into the volumetric domain, and that's very interesting. We also think there's a lot that can be done with arts, for example, a bit of a smaller scene, but they can give an interesting perspective when given to a consumer in a volumetric domain. Could you go on? And then we try to look at what some of the real use cases are. What do consumers want to see? Not what we want to necessarily push out to them, but what would they really actually want to go and pick up a device and start looking for volumetric experiences in. So these were some of the ones that we came up with and we looked at that have been sort of developed in the industry and experimented with, maybe somewhat commercially, but more often than not as an opportunity to understand the technology of possibilities and the degrees of audience engagement. I think free viewpoint video is one we all quite know and love in different connotations, whether it's moving between an array of cameras to interpolating between them as well. Bullet time, different effects that we can use from a production capability and a consumer-oriented capability as well. What roles do these play in the volume and the data that we produce? And then there's also, we want to be able to engage the audience. If we're going to give them a volumetric and a very immersive experience, we need to know how to engage with that audience and hook them into it as well. So they don't just feel like they're a highly immersed spectator, but they become part as a bit of a participant as well. Let's go on. Is there another slide, Lauri? Oh, there you go. Good. So, of course, and like, it's already good. I think I almost feel like I'm summarizing a lot of what's been said today already, but there's a lot of technology as well that's being developed. Some of this was still very early in development at the time when we ran our study mission, but we had a quick peek to see what's going on in the technology space, what's going on in terms of displays, because one of the major drawbacks from our virtual reality study that we did a while ago was that we could see that the technology was capable and the production side was growing in its capabilities, but the consumer side was very let down. People were wearing heavy, kludgy headsets. They were uncomfortable. They had poor resolution, and they really, when you stood that up alongside a 4K television, which someone would have gone to a store possibly and purchased in the same shopping experience, the VR activity was a bit weak. So we tried to have a look and see what technologies have gone into, have evolved since that time, at least 10 years ago, and what's happening right now. And of course, some of these ones we've heard about today, MIV, IVAS from an audio perspective, and the MPEG V3C, which is sort of the volumetric video compression. These are all good, but unless we can bring them all together in an experience, an immersive experience, which involves the visual aspect, the audible aspect, and a haptics aspect as well, we really have only just touched on part of it with the visual component. So looking at scene description from MPEG and the USD technologies, trying to understand what role those play from a standards perspective and what they might need to bring in the future is also very important, and something we spent a bit of time in the study mission looking at as well. Let's go on. Right, so that was our year, and we don't try to dwell on study missions in DVB. We want them to have a very short focus, a short attention, look at what's going on right here and now, and then understand what should the DVB do in the future. We kept our study mission running for, this is our second year running the study mission now, just so we could take a look at this engagement after 2023. A little bit more industry activity was starting to dwell or pick up in the volumetric space, so we've kept going. And now we're just looking to see what's really going to happen next. What do we think is the most successful opportunity that we can bring to the mass market? And that's really what we're looking for today. And so we'll keep our study mission going for a bit longer, try to understand what will happen there, and what DVB can do to really bring that mass market, while leveraging and interacting and maybe having these virtual volumetric experiences associated with traditional television style entertainment. We're moving off the broadcast systems with DVB. We're very much used to having big terrestrial towers and satellites flying over our heads, but a lot of that technology, the television technology, is moving to the internet, the delivery platforms, and the devices are changing their formats as well. So it seems reasonable as well for us to keep looking and saying, how do we move beyond just the rectangle and the speakers on the wall? So that's a little bit of what we've done in DVB, and I'll stick around for the Q&A later on. Brilliant, thank you. Let's hope that we have time for the Q&A. Sure.
So Jordi, you're up next.
Let's go. So I'm Jordi Jimenez, Head of Technology of Hajime. Just 2 bits. What is Hajime? The scope is media, and that comes from production to consumption, including streaming, immersive media, beyond 2D, broadcast, and so on, with a link to connectivity in terms of applications, in terms of network APIs, network functions, mobile technologies. We are actually a 3GPP market representation partner, and let's say the core elements of our activities is, first of all, cross-industry collaboration, right? Bringing people together in order to do good work, translate specifications into reference implementation, so that we want that these specifications that exist and that, let's say, companies have spent a lot of effort making them, that they end up in products and that they are able to be implemented, right? So in the end, we make technology fit into products, and we do this through development community, a developer development program that we put forward, which is called the Hajime Reference Tools. It's an open community of developers, open to Hajime members and non-members. Hajime members are sponsoring the community, the coordination of the contributions, the code, and so on. We use the reference tools to provide feedback to the relevant standardization organizations to validate and verify specifications. And we have a permissive software license model that allows companies to contribute while keeping IPR. We have at the moment reference implementations of 3GPP systems, but there is also MPEG. We are going to talk about this, Dash, IETF, GLTF, for instance, and DVB standards. In terms of immersive media and beyond 2D, we have at the moment 2 projects. Companies contributing are listed here, so big thanks to Qualcomm, InterDigital, Philips, and Motionspell for the contributions. And actually the contributions are, let's say, reference implementations of a series of standards, starting from MPEG immersive, for instance, based on V3C, let's say the creation of the bit stream that will include let's say a multiplex of the atlas, a multiplex of the content that needs to be transmitted in terms of the patches, right, to the frames and so on. The carriage, for instance, of V3C is defined in another standard, which allows us to use, for instance, regular 2D encoders to stream data based on Dash, on ISO BMFF, and so on. And another standard that I want to mention is, for instance, from MPEG as well, a scene description, which allows us to composite, let's say, a scene with different 3D and XR assets. So all of this is being implemented in terms of reference software for the content side, and then we will go also into the 3GPP side in terms of using the network in an intelligent way in order to manage traffic, dealing with devices, dealing with, for instance, different codecs and even different architectures for real-time communication, for split rendering, and so on. So we are putting, let's say, the pillars here for media first. What are the projects that have been contributed? Well, in terms of V3C, InterDigital and Philips have contributed a volumetric video platform. So this is all available in software. At the moment, the content, let's say, is pre-recorded, right? So all the bitstream of the V3C content is all pre-recorded. We have a streaming server available that we can use to push content out to clients that are actually, let's say, for instance, a Unity app that can run in an Android device. And what has been contributed as well is a series of, let's say, a decoder platform that can, let's say, demax the content, all the information that will be used, let's say, to reproduce, let's say, the atlas plus the patches to reproduce all the media and to render it for presentation in the end device. As said, this is available in our GitHub, so we have a Unity package that is, let's say, able to play with 3C content, and also the decoders that will be used and the synthesizers that will be used to present and to render all this content. This is how it looks like, right? So if we have an end-to-end streaming platform, what we are providing in the Hajime reference tools in terms of software is element 1 and 2, which is the V3C player and the decoder plugins. All of this is at the moment, let's say, private. So if you would like to access or to request access, you need to go to this website, and then we'll evaluate the request. But this is all, let's say, currently running, and you can play all of this in your phone. This is the content that is available. Let's say different formats and let's say multi-view plus depth, multi-plane image representations of different formats that are defined in the MPEG specifications and that we can play in phones, for instance. The other project, XR Media Integration in 5G, contributions from Qualcomm, InterDigital, and Motion Spell. I won't go into details, but MPEG is in description, let's say, allows to build, let's say, this platform to exchange content and interact in 3D environments. For instance, a regular player is changed here via presentation engines. When you request media, there are some pipelines that will translate this media into something that, let's say, can be presented, for instance, by Unity, and so on. MPEG defined some extensions actually to the GLTF format in order to include in first site, let's say, media elements, also audio and so on. And in the second stage, also, let's say, other extensions, including interactivity, anchoring, haptics, and so on. And also, in the context of volumetric video, well, there was an amendment also to make this compatible with V3C. In terms of software, because as I said, this is all available to be built, we have several repositories. We have an XR Unity player, all these media access functions with the APIs that, well, following this schema, right, that you can request content, create the pipelines, and so on. So all of this is becoming available. Let's say part of this, right? So a Unity player, the scene manager, the content as well in terms of, let's say, GLTF 2.0 scenes that we are constructing in order to add all these extensions defined by MPEG. Anybody is welcome to join the community. Participation is free, let's say, open to Hajime members and non-members. And I have prepared a short demo where, if everything goes well, let's see, we can see. This is the launch of the XR media with MPEG in description. You can just install the APK on the phone. We have some, let's say, reference assets that you can anchor, for instance, in the Hajime logo. And we can also show the V3C player with the Unity player with the scenes, the example scenes that have been contributed. Let's say we can use all these tools, let's say, to show that the technology works, to provide feedback to the relevant specific standards organization, and, well, to push technology into real applications and products, which is, at the end of the day, what we want to do. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jordi, for taking the time and present this. Good stuff. Without further ado, let's move on with the agenda and SVTA, Sanjay.
All right, very good. So I think we've heard some excellent presentations and great animation. So just a forewarning that the slides that I have are kind of dry with that respect. But hello, my name is Sanjay Mishra, and I'm an associate fellow at Verizon. The presentation today is on behalf of the Streaming Video Technology Alliance, or SVTA, which is a member of Metaverse Standards Forum, and Verizon is a member of SVTA. And I co-chair the Immersive Video Study Group within the SVTA. Next slide, please. So a quick introduction about the SVTA, as some of you may not be familiar with it. So it is a global technical association focused on solving key challenges and delivering high quality video at scale. it's a neutral forum where member companies collaborate on solving key issues within the streaming industry. Member companies include content publishers, content delivery networks, ISPs, CD and technology vendors, and the map on the right shows some of those members that are located globally. Next slide, please. So why is SVTA interested in volumetric media? One, given its member base that touches all aspects of streaming, there's a recognition of growing market for immersive experiences, as we have heard also throughout this session. And then there's a myriad of factors. For example, volumetric media is a critical component for next generation of entertainment and for enterprise solutions to support AR, VR, XR. And the traditional 2D video is evolving towards interactive and spatially immersive formats and requires robust frameworks for seamless delivery. SVTA also places a high value for interoperability. VR headsets, AR glasses, holographic displays have different requirements, but need standards to ensure compatibility across platforms and reduce fragmentations. And interoperability also helps content creators to produce media that works across universally. And lastly, but not the least, there are streaming and bandwidth challenges such as volumetric data size, as we know, that requires significantly more bandwidth and processing power compared to 2D. Traditional 2D video is evolving towards interactive and spatially immersive formats and requires robust frameworks for seamless delivery. So within the SVTA, all of this lands into what the Immersive Video Study Group is involved with. Next slide, please. So yes, so currently the Immersive Video Study Group is developing next iteration of technical paper to examine technologies around video-based visual volumetric coding, point cloud, MASH, and geometry-based point cloud. And importantly, assess the best fit across a breadth of XR use cases. For the study group, the current research topic is, for example, correlating XR experiences and trends with emerging XR standards. So for the sake of simplicity, we have divided these experiences in 3 buckets here. One would be sort of like non-immersive AR. These can be simple to create and view and easily accessed. For example, consider that from a basic device such as your basic smartphone, you can go to Pokemon Go, and all it requires is just a basic smartphone where players can use their devices to view and interact with virtual Pokemon characters overlaid on their real-world surroundings. Or, for example, the IKEA Place app that allows users to place virtual furniture in their homes to see how it fits and looks using their phones and tablet cameras. And then the second category is, which we call as semi-immersive MR experiences that allow users to interact with virtual objects. For example, Lowe's Studios style, where customers can use Apple's Vision Pro for home remodeling projects, or Porsche's announced partnership with Meta to use its Quest 3 MR headsets to facilitate event presentations and vehicle walkthroughs. And then the third bucket is the deeply immersive VR experiences that provides for genuine feeling of being there. For example, VR experiences that allow users to explore, for instance, visiting an ancient site, the Great Pyramid of Giza as an example, Giza. These applications combine hyper-realistic 3D modeling, which are AI-driven interactions and also give you the sense of multi-sensory feedback. So placing these use cases in buckets also help us see the breadth of use cases and that there's no one-size-fits-all technology or standards. So with that said, let's look at some of the key pillars in driving these use cases and informing the volumetric media standards landscape. Next slide, please. So I think you've heard a lot about these slides and details, and you've seen some great animation also actually demonstrating this. So this is really very dry from that point of view. But just to kind of recap again, the video-based visual volumetric coding comes out of the ISO spec as it's listed here, 30090, which provides the base functionality needed for video-based
visual volumetric coding. But just to parse the term, video-based conveys the use of video codecs, and the term visual really conveys the visual information that is to be coded. And then the video layer is just the video standard. And volumetric here is implying that it's a 6 degrees of freedom. And there are currently other specs. I know we touched on those as well, but there's the ISO 23090-5 NXH, which is the video-based point cloud compression, and also the ISO/IEC 23090-12, which is the MPEG immersive video, or MIV, which we also actually got to see some of that. And then the third extension is the ISO 23090-29, which is the video-based dynamic mesh coding, which we also saw a little bit of that. So all of this is really inspired from HEVC design. V3C is video codec agnostic, and any reasonable MPEG and non-MPEG video codec can be used for the video bit streams. So from the SVTA point of view, what I'm saying this is that we are the consumer of much of the standards that are come across, and we are sort of really analyzing what all that really means, what are the use cases where that applies to, and so forth. And a couple of other things to catch here is that the MPEG immersive video is also an extension of V3C. So is the video point cloud compression is an extension of V3C for compression of dynamic point clouds. And VPCC is optimized for video rate dense surface volumes. And lastly, to illustrate the decoder function as depicted on the right, that shows the codec flow. And V3C has a volumetric usability interface, VUI, and its own set of supplemental enhancements information, the SEI messages. And it is also possible to carry these SEI messages in these video sub-bit streams. Example of V3C SEI messages are scene object information, and volumetric rectangle information, viewport position, etc. And there's much more details that we actually have captured into the document that is currently being under development. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick recap of the geometry-based point cloud compression. The GPCC standard published as ISO 23090-9 originated from the same point cloud coding initiative as VPCC. However, GPCC is a 3D compression approach that encodes content directly into a 3D space as a collection of points. Each point in the cloud is associated with two characteristics, its 3D position and its color. These points are coded as voxels within the 3D space. As you see on the picture on the right, 3D spaces are recursively subdivided into octants with voxels represented in octree or an octree slice. And octree coding is a simple occupancy map. Next slide, please. So this is covering just sort of a summary of what mesh-based coding is. So on a lighter note, in quoting text from our upcoming technical paper on XR, we start to describe mesh as one of the most overloaded terms in XR and streaming worlds. It has been used to describe infrastructure deployments, architectural techniques, but also as brand name products and services to convey some form of XR rendering environments. For example, Microsoft Mesh, which is a cloud-based platform for mixed reality user collaboration. But on a serious note, Mesh describes the data and techniques that render complex 3D dimensional shapes and environment from arrays of meshes consisting of very simple primitive shapes, following on with the theme of storage and rendering introduced in the VPC and GPCC. So what it does really is, using a simple two-dimensional object such as triangles, it forms the core building block in generating these complex 3D surfaces and objects. The vertices of each triangle are connected by line segments, and complicated surfaces can then be formed by gluing collections of triangles together along the edges between common vertices. Granted, all of this, what I just said, is pretty complex in terms of authoring environment, but it is, as we saw also on some of the previous slides, that it's supported by Unity and Unreal and Godot, for example. Next slide, please. Which I think might be more interesting to the viewers, because I captured much of the information that actually you visually saw into some words, but here's what I wanted to sort of lay out in terms of based on our observations on each of these three different standards that we looked at. So from the video-based volumetric coding, what we have seen is that it is excellent for XR streaming, but requires additional processing for 3D reconstruction. On the other hand, the geometry-based point cloud compression is suitable for dense data, but adds high computational complexity and is less efficient for interactive use. And then the mesh-based coding is efficient for interactive AR, VR applications, supports complex animation, but potential loss of geometric detail during the compression phase. Next slide, please. So this is another slide that we just wanted to give you an overview of some of the other work that we are doing. So this work is another example that comes out of trying to understand the emerging standards and their influence to the broader XR streaming world. In this case, my SVTA cohorts have experimented with the QUIC protocol with the goals of understanding, can the enhanced QUIC features improve the XR experience, and other goals as I've listed down on the left-hand side without having to go through all of those. The key part here is that in summary, what we observed was that with respect to the streaming and the XR experience, we did not see any appreciable gains in throughput and latency, and also did not see any appreciable benefits on streaming media. But we did note improvements when delivering short bursts of latency sensitive, highly transient data. And much more details actually are available on this study within the SVTA publication. Next slide, please. So that brings me to the acknowledgement section, and I wanted to acknowledge Brian Stevenson. He's a technical fellow at SVTA, and he's been doing an outstanding work, including the research topics that I actually presented. And a big thanks for him for contributing to this presentation as well. And also a big thank to Bart Kroon for his individual contribution as an individual to the XR technical paper that we are undertaking. And also some of the information that I shared comes from Bart. So thank you both. And with that, next slide, please. This is just the last slide. I want to thank you very much for your time and greatly appreciate you listening to me. Thank you so much.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for the presentations. We have a narrow window for questions due to my poor keeping of time. There's luckily one question already on the chat, so why don't we start with that? And that's directed to Sanjay. So there's a question: quick, little or no gains as compared to what? So yeah, care to elaborate on that last?
Yes, sorry,
third last slide.
Yes, I should have said that the keyword is missing TCP. So the quick replaces TCP, and we did not see any substantial gain over TCP.
All right, interesting. Any other questions online? Ralph.
Yeah, hey, the question to Devin concerning performance of AVV. I don't know if something can be shared. You mentioned, for example, 6 characters can be decoded on Quest 2. Do you have any information on the texture resolution? For example, is it high resolution characters? And maybe do you have some ideas on bitrate? How much bitrate would, for example, a 4K textured character would need? Thank you.
Yeah, great. So it's somewhat variable. Basically, the bitrate depends on the amount. It depends on a few things, but one of the things it depends on is the total vertex count. The other thing it depends on is like how much texture space you're allocating for quarter, half, and full res texture blocks. But in the game that we showed, they were around 11 megabits per second per character stream. And the resolution, I don't want to say just in case I got it wrong, but I think it'd probably be 1440 or 2K textures.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other questions there? There's a question if AVV demo can be shared as well. Not sure in what format that would be shared.
Yeah, great. I'll have to I'll have to look into that. If so, I'll share it with the VMI group, and they can share it to the audience.
All right, good. Looking forward to it. Maki?
Yes, actually, great presentations. My question is, perhaps, pointed towards the DVP, Paul or Sanjay. I think if any could answer this. So in terms of the research, I've seen with the DVB that it's been the starting point, like looking at the state of the volumetric media, and from there, like trying to see what kind of developments and improvements could be brought. So how frequently do you maintain, like those reports, like, and how do you, factor in any updates in terms of what's happening in the industry? So what kind of mechanisms do you deploy to ensure that you're keeping up to date with what's happening, especially in the production and development side? So updating those studies back and surveys. So what do you do in general to, enhance research activities and being up to date with what's happening in the industry in terms of real applications and developments?
Sure. So, I mean, DVB is very much focused on commercial opportunities, and everything we do from specifications and profiling and everything else has that in mind. What is the immediate commercial opportunity that's available? So the study mission was run under that to look at that question: is there a commercial opportunity now, or the next few years that DVB should be looking at to create interoperable end-to-end specifications for? And that's the study mission looks at the key aspects of that. At the moment, we're not looking at updating that on a regular basis. We did our work in that space, and we've got a report. And now I think we'll just sit back and wait to see what happens maybe over the next 12 months. And if our members then look at the industry and say, yes, there's been a turn, there's been an upshift, we should be looking at here's some new technologies, some of them you might have even seen today, that will actually overcome some of the barriers that we think still exist, maybe as we're documenting the study mission report. If we can overcome some of those, then we can say now we've moved on a little bit from there, and here's the next opportunity. But it's got to be motivated by commercial opportunity. As much as I love the technology, and all you technology guys out there are doing a great job, people have to be able to make money on this at the end of the day, and that's what we're here to help solve as well.
All right, thank you. Good question, great response. There's one more hand up, Jordi, very quickly.
Very quickly. So sometimes we lack a little bit like scenes or content that we can show in kind of like that brings kind of good representation of the service from a user point of view. From the companies here, or also from Metaverse Standards Forum, is there a way to collect scenes that we could use, for instance, in 5G MAC for interoperability? At some point, we'll need to deal with 3GPP systems and so on. So is there a place where there are scenes, test sequences, for instance, with a good licensing framework that could be used for our purposes?
Great question. If there is one, let us know. Maybe that is an action for us to see if we can do something about that, to pull together some sort of a pool of content.
That would be great, Lauri.
All right, good. All right, with that, I'm sorry to cut the questions and answers a little short. I'm sure there would have been a lot more questions, but we need to move on with the agenda. So next up, there's the presentation on the volumetric media, or like the state of volumetric media. And as a background, this is a survey that we did before the event, where we did a little pulse check on the volumetric media industry. And the kind of intention was to see where we as a whole stand, who are working on it, and in what capacity, what kind of a momentum we have, and what should we focus as an industry to enable a healthy ecosystem for volumetric media. We got 24 responses, which is fewer than we had anticipated or hoped. But hopefully with this, we can provide some meaningful results as well. Initially, we decided to construct a survey in a way that would allow us to analyze the responses between organizations and individual perspectives. Setting it up that way was easy for us, and once we reviewed the results, we did not observe any notable differences between these two different points of view. So what we then decided to do at the end was just pull all the resources together in a single analysis. And the responses are primarily from people who are working on volumetric media, or at least they have a good understanding of it. No one responded to the questions that they don't understand it or they have never heard of it. Also, 90% of the respondents are actively working in organizations that are looking into volumetric media. And that brings up a point that the results are actually, they can be considered as expert opinions. And in that regard, we feel that these responses actually reflect quite nicely some of the aspects of the industry. And that's why we feel comfortable of sharing those today. Moving forward, a little bit of the company profiles of the respondents. As I said, most of the people are working on volumetric media, and actually most of the people are working on companies that are considered primarily as technology providers, almost 80% of the responses. During the last 2 years, the number of people working on volumetric media has either increased or remained the same. So that gives an idea of the momentum is kind of building. When hiring, the software engineers are the primary open roles that these companies have. And that kind of seems to suggest that the industry momentum is going forward and that people are still working on some of the technology enablers. So when you consider the type of people that would be hired when you were building an active business, you would be probably looking at sort of a business development type of perspectives, and there would be maybe more companies with profiles as for system integrators or service providers. But like this kind of gives a story that we're still kind of working our way to get there, right? Then a couple of words about the volumetric media consumption habits. Many of the respondents are not regularly consuming volumetric content, but there are some daily users and weekly users as well. So that is something to be mindful about. Then there are some of the friends and family that have been exposed to volumetric media experiences, but there's a big number of our inner circle that haven't been exposed to volumetric media. So maybe we can be a bit proactive in our own circles as well and share these experiences with our loved ones and friends. On the devices of consuming volumetric content, they are pretty much as expected. So the highest ranking areas are head-mounted displays, laptops and desktops, and phones and tablets. But what needs to be pointed out here is that these experiences are not dedicated or solely for head-mounted displays. So volumetric media can be consumed on a lot of different type of devices. Then one thing that is frequently asked on volumetric media is, what are the use cases? Everyone asks, so what's it used for? Why do I need to see the back of a football player or something like that? Why is it enough if somebody directs my content? And we had these three different categories for measuring out kind of differences here. So we wanted first ask what is the most suitable use cases for volumetric media. Then what are the most suitable what are the use cases that are driving market adoption? And then lastly, we asked what are the organizations actually working on? We were hoping to kind of pinpoint some elaborate information here, but surprisingly or non-surprisingly, there are no large surprises here. The sports, entertainment, and music as the use cases or application areas are clearly leading the pack. They also have the largest impact when it comes to the suitability of the technology and driving more users to consume the content. So we as an industry are clearly focusing on the right things. Then like one anomaly here was that work-related use cases are actually driving a lot of activities, but they're not driving market adoption as much. So I don't know, maybe there's some perspective or bias in the industry that we should be working on work-related volumetric video experiences rather than some other topics. Then there were areas such as art, education, and advertising that were somewhat seen as more suitable areas for volumetric content, but were not as populated. So maybe there is a space for playing around in those areas. Gaming is underrepresented here because we didn't have it as a predefined category in the survey. So then about the future outlooks, clear majority believes that volumetric media will enter mainstream 2027 or after. Only quarter of the responses are actually considering it to enter mainstream next year or the year after. So interesting finding. On average, the respondents agree that the market size of volumetric media is around 2 billion. So there were some people that felt that it should be slightly higher and some people that felt it should be slightly lower and then much lower and much higher. But these kind of balance out and the kind of consensus is around this ballpark. And just for reference, Netflix annual revenues for 2023 was actually 33 billion. So that gives an idea of the size of the market, at least on 2023. Then on average, people agree on this volumetric video growth rate of 28% on a compound annual growth rate over the next 5 years, which is quite good when you consider Netflix CAGR was 16.4% for their revenue. So that is exceeding the industry kind of standard by quite a lot. Then we asked where would people place volumetric media on the hype cycle, and there was very nice distribution of responses. Technology trigger being the most answered reply, but then the rest of the responses were quite distributed along the hype cycle. We did talk about this briefly in the working group previously, and there were some interesting insights that maybe we could see the kind of restructuring and reshaping a few years ago with the major volumetric media related companies as some sort of a trough of disillusionment. So maybe we're getting up from that trough towards the plateau. So just an interesting thought. Then about how to speed up the adoption of volumetric media. So we asked what aspects of the media would need to improve for you personally to increase your consumption. And it is pretty clear that the overall quality needs to still improve. Almost 80% of the responses actually pointed out this aspect. Another thing was the availability of content, which is also well, obviously it plays a role, but it is replicated in many of the answers. Another thing to highlight is the affordability of experiences, both from the end user point of view and the pricing of content point of view. Then we asked what is needed for volumetric media to become mainstream, like non-specialist use cases. And we pretty much saw the previous responses as the most popular ones, but then there were a couple of other options that got raised as well, which is better technologies for producing the content that would be needed, better end user form factors, and more pull from the consumers. So what should we as an industry focus on? So this is kind of an open-ended questions, and these these bullets are paraphrased or distilled. And here's the word cloud that kind of emphasizes the most frequently appearing words from the responses. So these tell the same story as the previous slide about the importance of content and the quality of experiences and so on. But they also highlight some other things. So mainly people believe that we should be building commercially relevant open standards that target for a baseline of interoperability. Then we felt the responses reflected that we should be doing better job at educating the customers and consumers, which I agree. There was also comments about reducing complexity, targeting devices that are already out there and not targeting just head-mounted displays, and then leveraging existing infrastructure for content delivery. Just a summary. So there's an obvious bias in the responses. They come from professionals that are working in volumetric media, and we treat them as such. There are many application areas for volumetric media, but sports, entertainment, music, and education are probably the most interesting ones. Non-coincidentally, these are also the areas where we see the most, where we see driving the best end user adoption as well. So we as an industry are kind of working on the right areas. The consensus is that the volumetric media is still expected to enter mainstream after 2027. This is supported by a number of different questions in the survey. One that was point blank asking this question, but then there were these silent kind of enforcing questions or indicators, which was that organizations are primarily working on volumetric media, which are technology providers. The hiring is still software engineer focused, and companies have either maintained or increased their investment in volumetric media. So that gives an emphasis on the kind of trend going forward. There were interesting and different views on where the technology was based on a hype cycle. We can treat it as such. Then the respondents believe that there is a higher than industry average growth rate for volumetric media with an average of 28% compound annual growth rate. Then the kind of the key takeaways, what the industry should be focusing on is to improve the quality of experiences, build better technologies, make more high quality content available and more easily, increase affordability of volumetric media experiences, and then lastly, develop commercially relevant open standards. And yeah, with that, I ran a bit over time, but not too much, I feel. So unfortunately, there's no time for Q&A. So take this as a kind of one survey response and result. I bet there would have been great questions, but we badly need to move on towards the panel discussion. I think we need to do some sort of a kind of a dissemination of these results later. So we'll look into that one, and hopefully at that time we can also then answer any questions that you may have. Right, so let's move on to the panel. And I would then invite all the panelists to turn on their videos while I speak them in. So first up, we have Malek Ben Salem, who works as a technology executive and managing director for emerging tech security at Accenture. She has over 2 decades of experience from the forefront of technological advancements, such as AI, quantum, space tech, and metaverse. She advises Fortune 500 companies and holds a PhD on computer science from Columbia University. So welcome, Malek. Next up, we have Sven, who already has video on, brilliant, CEO of Volucap. He started his entrepreneurship at a very early age of 13, quickly became known for his exceptional computer graphics skill sets, and has held several C-level titles in multimedia companies like Slice Production Studios and VFXbox. Also, he's an ambassador for Innovation of Berlin and XR for All. Next up, we have Hitesh. Hitesh is a senior engineering manager at Meta, and he works on Codec Avatars project to enable future photorealistic volumetric communication. And we all know about Codec Avatars and what splash they made in this interview between Lex Friedman and Max Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg. So he actively leverages AI, CG, and computer vision to enable scalable Codec Avatar experiences. Next one, we have Ben Nunez, the co-founder and CEO of Evercoast. He has held numerous C-level titles in multimedia companies such as Little Star, Birdbox, CIF, and most recently Evercoast. At Evercoast, Ben focused on building a volumetric video platform for virtual production, mobile, XR, and the metaverse. Next up, we have Bart Kroon, who is a senior scientist at Philips. He focuses on research of XR video and related standardization in MPEG. He is a chair and editor of MPEG Immersive Video Standard, and also seen to contribute to 3GPP, SVTA, 5G MAC, and IATF. Also has interests in glasses-free technologies. And lastly, but definitely not least, we have Thomas Stockhammer, Senior Director of Technical Standards from Qualcomm. He's a co-author for more than 250 research publications, 250 patents, and thousands of standards contributions. He actively participates in various leadership roles in different multimedia-related standards organizations such as 3GPP, DVB, MPEG, IETF, ATSC, CTA, ETSI, MSF, SVTA, and -IF. Oof. All right. With that, let's actually get started with the panel discussion. And yeah, if all the panelists could turn on their camera feeds, that would be great. That would maybe make this experience a little more immersive. So first question, this is the easy one where I polluted everyone's opinions by just talking about it in the survey, is what kind of media experiences would you consider most promising? And why don't we start with Ben?
Well, you did. I mean, you kind of you really touched on a lot of them in the survey. So there's a pretty wide coverage of use cases. We've seen a ton, obviously, that we went through in our presentation, from brand marketing and to museums and tourism, medical and training. Sports is one that we have spent an enormous amount of time in. And have probably a good majority of our customers are in the sports world. So we're pretty excited about the future of sports and how volumetric and just spatial video in general will transform how we consume that content. I think we all have to ask the question, why 3D? Why does 3D actually matter? Why is it going to be better than what we experience on our broadcast televisions or on mobile? And I think volumetric in many ways answers that question. And so that's one that stands out to me, of course, just kind of given where we are. And I'd say one more in terms of just kind of use cases that we haven't touched on, but a lot of our customers are using it for sort of AI model training. So being able to capture large amounts of data, train models, and then generate synthetic, sort of hallucinated in many ways, but pre-trained characters based on that data, and which I think can lead to a number of different ways in which media consumption will change as well. So probably not in the world of sports, given the need for authenticity, but in others as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Would anyone want to follow up on that one?
Yeah, maybe I quickly just to agree to Ben's statement. Like, I think AI is currently not. I mean, everyone is talking about it, but I think especially volumetric video in combination with AI is like a big market that will now come. Generating training data for all the companies, because all the regular training data is already used, and setting up those data sets to generate new actors, but also having full scans with full authenticity of humans with such systems, I think is a very interesting market we currently also looking into. And it's, of course, very early still, but it's something where we already generate a lot of data to have the library of data. And also, for example, that's one of the reasons why we capture Holocaust survivors, for example, with our system right now, because you can't get this data later in the process. So we now gather all the data, even if we don't know what we will do later with it, to be honest. But having the data already available to keep those stories alive for any kind of device or whatever comes up in the future is kind of a crucial thing for us. So that's something that we should all look out, what's coming up with AI in our market, because it's changing a lot. Or even questioning, why do you need a volumetric capture stage when you can use your phone, scan yourself, and create a digital avatar of the person, which looks quite similar maybe in the end then with enough AI training, but you need to have a lot of data sets to get to those results. Okay.
Excellent point. I think the natural way to follow up that point is Hitesh, who already has hand up as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add more color to what Ben and Sven were sharing. I think really interactive and personalized volumetric media experience, right, would be the game changer in my opinion, right? Specifically, for example, so social presence, right? What it enables, right, to answer Ben's question, what does this 3D add, which we don't actually get on a 2D video call as we are having right now, right? Is all the physical cues of being all of us in the same room and talking about it, right? So I think this personalized interactive volumetric media experience is what I call a social presence, right? This would enable people to defy distance, connect with their loved ones across time zones, and create community. And that's what I think would be a game changer.
Brilliant. Thank you. I love that use case myself as well. Anyone else care to chip in?
Yeah, so I think it depends. My answer depends on what you mean by promising, right? If you're talking about commercially promising, then obviously sports and entertainment, I think those are the use cases that would probably are most commercially promising because of the mass, right, of the target audience. If it's about impact, I think use cases around education and training. I'm thinking perhaps training, surgeons how to perform a surgery, right? That's an impactful use case, and that's what I would think as promising. If it's about, personally promising, I think of use cases that are related to very unique experiences. So for instance, think about travel to remote areas, to the Antarctica, or an experience around experiencing the Amazon forest, or those National Geographic types of experiences that are thrilling. I think those are, fascinating and would be very promising.
Absolutely, very promising. Anyone else?
I could just quickly add something to the medical statement. Actually, we're currently planning next year to set up a full volumetric capture stage instead of a medical surgery room, so to capture real surgery. And the idea is to get training data for students, of course, but also to get training data for robots for future surgeries, because they need to be trained as well. And you don't have any not so good training material of like how hands are holding stuff, how much you push your hand on stuff. So it's also like, I think, a very interesting big market which hasn't utilized volumetric video at all at the moment.
True.
Yes, everything is already said. So we're thinking like indeed immersive sports, like metaverse and telepresence, and also medical applications. I think those are the three important ones that we recognize.
Absolutely. All right. Why don't we move on to the next question? So which aspects, technologies or trends do you consider the key enablers for volumetric media? And what do you think drives its adoption? Why don't we start with Bart?
Yeah, so I think what we recently see happening is that you see that computer vision, or now it's called AI, is progressing a lot quickly. And we also see advances in things like network connectivity, so 5G and edge processing, and all these things combined that can really help to be able to stream volumetric video. So maybe there are some steps to be taken, but this will, certainly help to accelerate this progress.
All right, cool, good. Hitesh, do you have something to follow up?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, there are two key enablers, right, that will drive the adoption. First one, and I will sound like a little bit of broken record, right, is not just playback of volumetric media, but interactive volumetric media, where individuals can immerse themselves and actually participate in the experience, right? Whether it's education, whether it's medical, whether it's social presence, whichever way we think about it, right? And the second important part is basically democratizing of the content creation, right? How do we get basically more people to be able to create this content and share it with everybody so that there is a lot more variety of long tail of content that people want to immerse themselves in can be reached?
Yeah, absolutely agree. The last one is very interesting. Thomas.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that one because I had some communication internally with the colleagues who do all of the research and basic understanding where we get to new experiences. And the key issue for us is that we have an ease of content production, right? So how can we ease and simplify for a regular user that they can produce content that then gives us new experiences? So it's going to be your TikTok video, your reels, your social share, and that needs to be, you need to be possible to produce content
on your regular consumer-grade smartphone, right? And with the advances of all of with AI, with the ability of using regular cameras, maybe with some advances, and basically getting that type of content being more prominent, the whole adoption has an opportunity. What is probably a huge barrier if you need specific training to generate content, if you need special setups like complex camera setups, that is something that probably will be a burden to get this going. So we need that the average user, the consumer, the one who uses the smartphone on a daily basis, can produce content in that manner. And there is some light at the end of the tunnel with all of these emerging Gaussian splats and so on, but it's still a way to go, right? Thank you.
All right, good. Excellent point. Ben, you have something to follow up still?
No, I just echo exactly what Thomas and Nitesh and Bart mentioned.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it's really just I think making this content accessible. We have to come up with ways to make it easily created, and it's going to span the spectrum. It's going to go from mobile-based capture, something with your smartphone that is going to rely on a lot of pre-trained models and hallucinations of what might be happening if you're going to create something fully immersive, all the way up to Hollywood caliber, massive large stage captures and everything in between. Just like there is in all forms of video production today, we can do it on our mobile phones, and we can make Hollywood movies and everything in between. And Volumetric will need to get there.
Right. Excellent point. It's not only about consumer capture or like studio capture. Sven.
Yeah, I also agree on those statements. One thing I would add, is I think the content, very good content, is not so much out there yet with volumetric video. I mean, there's some games like 7 Guests, which is cool to play and so on, but it's not so visible at the moment. And usually also I think the audience doesn't care if it's volumetric video; it just needs to look cool and they want to get entertained. So I mean, we are in a bit of a tech bubble, and I think this is something where we need to also prove, in the gaming industry, a bit more, that they understand what we can do with those characters and what we have captured, because they also have a big misconception there, that basically if you play AAA games, they all are very linear. They're not very dynamic at all. In most cases, you have the same storytelling, and the only stuff that's happening is that the head is looking into your direction, they're talking to you. So they're often also, especially in AAA games, very limited in terms of choices. But it's about telling a cool story and making immersive feelings that you are part of it. And I think there are still not so many cases which uses volumetric video yet, which showcasing such possibilities for storytelling. And I think this is something that we need more cool cases that we can show. And then the other part I would love to add is I think when we getting into a point where we can generate basically characters and games fully with AI, in neural networks, and we're using this data for it, I think then we will get to a point, of course, where everything will converge way more, with all the data we have captured, and we will, I think, have custom games for every person, which is completely individual, also movies. And I think this will be kind of a very drastic change how we will consume media in the future. And I think the capture tech of volumetric video will help a lot to get to this point faster.
Yeah, I fully agree. Anyone else? Anything to follow up what Sven just said? If not, then let's move to the next questions, which was about how do you see volumetric media consumption changing in the next few years, and what about beyond that? And why don't we start with Malek with this one?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't see it changing too much over the next 3 years. Beyond that, definitely, I think once we are beyond this Gen AI hype, perhaps more investments will be geared towards volumetric media. Or they can, towards the end, maybe they can go hand in hand to Sven's point earlier. You can train AI models using volumetric media. So maybe that would be a driver to bring the investments back in, and they can, get the technology moving forward.
Great. All right, Sven, you have something to?
Yeah.
Do you think something else?
From my personal or from our experience, it's like I think the amount of content is changing so much. I mean, like when we started in 2018, and then the following years till 2021, most of the projects that we had were very short content, like maximum I would say like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, like very short pieces or music clips or whatever. And since then, really, like the amount of content we are creating has drastically increased, really like hours of volumetric video content now. And this, I think, I would say like it's a positive trend. Even like the projects you're doing, like last year we did a project which was like already half an hour. This year or next year we do like in our project which will have like more than 1 hour of volumetric video content. And I see from year to year also like the content is getting longer. Also, as more people get acceptance to VR headsets, basically that they become more popular and they want to see longer and more stories. Now that's even like this meta when you do games now, it's like you have to have experience that at least have like 3 to 5 hours entertainment, where you otherwise you will not get very much published or like pushed into the charts. So the requirement is more for longer content now, and this also translates down to volumetric video, which I really appreciate to see more and more, because then you can tell deeper stories with longer content.
Excellent. Ben, any?
Yeah, I mean, I delineate between, things that need to be captured with a camera and things that can be completely synthetically, hallucinated. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in the media world is, there's all this Gen AI is being, just your imagined and thing. And there are so many use cases where that's helpful. And, in the world of creativity, that's incredibly powerful. There are also so many things that will always, in my opinion, depend upon something that, has a lens and can actually capture the situation or the person, as they are, what they're doing. It might be enhanced by AI, it might be enhanced with generative capabilities, but I see a bit of a fork in the road with kind of people's approaches to this market, and in those two buckets.
Cool, that's excellent. Any other perspectives? If not, then we can move on. So the survey shows that people want to see higher quality volumetric media experiences and get better access to content with lower investment in terms of pricing of the content and devices. What do you consider as the biggest challenges that the volumetric media industry needs to tackle? Why don't we start with Bart?
I think it was mentioned a couple of times already. We need to have availability of content. It's really limiting. Like also all this standardization work it's so hard to get content. So we have some and we have made some ourselves, but we are not content producers, so it is really awkward to do it. But yeah, that would really help to move things forward. And the other thing I think I also one person I heard say like, give me your SDK. So you don't need to have just codecs, but you also want to have full software stack, so you can directly try it. So yeah, content and end-to-end software solutions, that is probably what is needed.
Brilliant. I don't think anyone will disagree with that statement. Thomas, do you have something to build on?
Yeah, again, I go back to some of the communication I have with my internal colleagues. I believe there is 2 aspects to be differentiated. One is the user-generated content, so content that is produced by masses. The other one is content that is professionally produced, something like movies or professional sports, right? So let me, with the latter one, there's great experiences, but very little content. Most of this content, I understand, is today given away for free. I understand that there has been these aspects being just as promotional efforts. But the content industry, if they invest in this type of production, it's not only the formats, it's also the whole ecosystem about monetizing the content, about protecting the content, and so on and so on. So we really need to make sure that for professional content, all of the other aspects are in place. And then obviously there's a quality aspect, there's a delivery aspect. So I think professional content is going to be challenging for some time because it has all of these other dimensions. For user-generated content, that's what's said. I think that this is happening. The question is how much you have to do photorealistic and how much you do synthesized, how much you use AI in all of this, right? So, for example, we discussed the avatar communication. And we believe, for example, that's an easy entry point to get some volumetric experiences. You use your perception device to then synthesize the avatar and do the animation. So that's the first step. It's simple from a network. It's also easier from basically having a controlled experience. The next steps will be how to generate more content as said. But I really believe we should differentiate a bit the professional content from the user-generated. It has very different requirements. Thank you.
That is an excellent clarification. We should bear in mind that there are different types of content, but we need more every type of content. I think. Malek, you have something to add here?
Yeah. So your question, or the survey actually mentions also, pricing of devices, and I'll, everybody on the panel mentioned content. I will add the interoperability, right? If I'm a consumer and I need to invest in a device, price wouldn't matter as much if I know the content that I'm getting. If I'm investing in a Meta device, I'm not going to get content from Meta only. I'll get content from other providers. Then I may, maybe less sensitive to that price. And so that creates the adoption or the market. But if there's no interoperability and I'll be consuming content just from one provider, then I will be very sensitive to device pricing.
Very good. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Anything to add?
I mean,
Sven?
with this Meta, you can basically, you have a lot of different content providers, which is already nice, and that they opened up the system. And I also think with the price now with the Meta Quest 3S, it's a good step forward to get like to a direction where it become more accessible actually as a VR headset. Because currently, I mean, it's way too few people using VR headsets. I mean, that's one of the big challenges. I mean, we have so few devices, and that's why, I mean, a lot of companies, or as itself, like focusing on 2D content, because that's a big market, like generating clips for TV shows or like generating data. But the real benefit basically comes out when we can play it back in 3D environments, where you can really look into the eyes of the person and they stare at you. And I would fully agree that the quality is one big aspect of it, and also like all the sub-steps that relates to it. I mean, if I look at 4D Gaussian splattings at the moment with compression, 1 minute is like 10 gigabyte of data for just a small scene if you want to present it in a somewhat feasible way. And this is nothing that people could download easily if they want to watch like a half an hour of content. So, and that's something I think even like with meshes and texture compressions, it's still like a lot of data as well. So there are a lot of, I would say, like smaller steps we also need to fix in the backyard, like make it more accessible, make it more easy streamable, even in higher resolutions. I think like 4K is like, for me, like kind of minimal thing for like virtual reality, because you need to have some kind of distance to the person. But personally, I mean, I would love to have more like 16K texture resolution streamed to the headsets, but we are not there yet. It's like step by step, and also with Gaussians, it's way too big at the moment. So, but compression is getting forward. So I really hope that the standardization and all those clever people in those groups here thinking about those topics, how to solve them, that we can make a dent and make it faster moving forward, because all those little things are holding us all back in the industry, like pushing content to more people. And I think this is something where we should investigate how we can more closely work together to push it forward, because otherwise the cake will take a while until we have a cake which we can share with each other.
Right. Ben, I sense you had something to add as well.
I was just going to say that I think people always wanted better, faster, cheaper, and if it's not if it's not high quality enough, then or if it's really high quality, then they're going to want it faster and they want it cheaper. If it's cheap, they're going to want it high quality, and I think ultimately it's got to be all of it over the course of time, and a lot of this will determine how you are consuming it. If I am consuming it in a Meta Quest, it's I'm going to want to see something that's pretty high quality, because I'm going to be getting up close to it. If I'm seeing it on a mobile phone, maybe it can be a little bit lower quality, the screen resolution smaller. So I think it's got to be all of it over the course of time.
Excellent point. Bit of a reality check. Any final remarks on this particular topic? If we then move to the next one. So what we've heard is that content is the key. We need better content also at cheaper price points, and that there are different types of content. It can be a little tricky to understand what we as an industry should really focus on. So what do you believe we should look into next, like one problem at a time? And why don't we start with whoever is willing to answer this one?
Well, so as a member of the working group, I think that the next thing, besides having this town hall and the survey, the next step is we want to do some kind of interoperability test and see if we can start somewhere. Exchange bit streams, exchange content, try different renderers, and see if we can work on this and try to get some clarity in this space.
Brilliant. Any other views?
Much more than just plain point cloud or plain multiple views, but there is much more data that or richness that can be transferred. So that's maybe also something to study. What is actually needed for a full interactive volumetric experience? What kind of data is useful?
Yeah, agree. It's a good first thing to look into. Any other views?
Yeah, it's
Maybe
totally
discussing the
with respect to the
go ahead.
compression and decompression algorithms.
I was
I
just going to
didn't quite
suggest what is the cart and what is the horse? You know, is the lack of a standard and sort of interoperability and playback holding us back, or is the lack of awareness, real commercial applications, you know, the ability to actually create this content and do it well and, you know, better, faster, cheaper, actually holding us back? And, you know, there's a deep discussion there that is not just isolated to our industry, but, you know, I think generally speaking, that's something a lot of companies, industry struggle with.
Good point. Thomas?
Yeah, so from a standards perspective, I mean, what we see right now, what drives a bit standards is the interoperability between the ecosystem of the Meta Android with the iOS ecosystem, right? But that is something that is relatively simple right now. So Apple Vision Pro, iPhone 16 Pro, they have done steps towards beyond to they introduced a new codec, MVHVC, they allow stereo. So we would like to make sure that if you create content, a message on an Android device, that can be shared with the Apple ecosystem. There is also the question, can you basically then add some metadata that allows you to improve the rendering and so on? And this is not the latest of the greatest research. We're talking about technologies that have been developed 10 years ago, but they go into mass market devices. And so this is like first step of standards. Once in a while, the standards don't have to be at the front end. I believe they can be more like defining and helping broad adoption of interoperability to ensure that you can work across the ecosystem. So that's one of the efforts we're trying to address in standards right now on a simpler manner. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It also brings another interesting question, for example, having video calls between Android and, iOS. So, like, what standards are there to support those video calls then really, and other than the video codecs themselves? Like, how can you then build on that to produce other types of interoperability? But yeah, any other comments on what we as an industry should focus on?
Maybe one little thing from my end. I think for the interactive part, I think this is something that often get requested, like quite early on. But usually when clients think about interactivity, then it means that they also need to control the other person and they need to direct them in a way that is basically then getting back to sitting in front of a computer and doing it like a bit like a game designer or game developer. And this afraids more the customer. So they say, okay, let's do recapture and let's do reshoot, and then they have the animations in place. So currently, What I see a lot of clients in the beginning, they think, yeah, we need a fully automated animatable character. And then when they rethink about it, they have to animate them in a way that it's already more effort than just doing a capture volumetrically with a person again. Of course, there's some cases where it's not possible, or cases where you want to have like the player as a full control over the character. But in most of the cases, what I see when I play games and so on, everything is even like in fully, even if the character is fully animatable, it's still like very scripted and everything is very linear. And stuff like having like head retargeting or that the character is looking to your eyes, those stuff are already working. I mean, those are crucial things, I think, but like having fully interactive things would be interesting, but I think this is still like a bit of a stretch. I mean, if you're also working on those things, of course, in the back end, but getting AI to really understand the full motion and complexity of faces and so on in a 3D space and bringing it like in dialogues without any like glitches happening requires a lot of GPU power to process and train. And it's still like, in the end, if you want to do it just for the face, it's getting closer. But if you want to do it for full body, it's really like still like a stretch of time that we have to work on. But of course, this would be like a topic that could be interesting to solve. But I think at the moment we need to have ways that are more efficient to bring all the data down to the different devices, like make it like really streamable and automatically accessible. And I think this is more like a challenge because people don't have like 10 gigabytes of storage on their smartphones just for watching a few minutes of clips. And this is something, yeah, I think this is also more crucial if you want to get into a bigger audience, into a bigger market, than having like dynamic avatars to just bring them at the first step down to all the devices.
Great point. Why don't we take a question from the chat for a change? So there's a question. Do you think immersive technology adoption needs a must-see content trigger like Avatar did for 3D or like the moon landing did for TV sales? And what is it? What will be that trigger?
Hitesh just responded, so Hitesh should jump in and answer that.
All right.
Yeah, I was just typing the response. Sorry for being distracted because I was trying to answer it in the chat so that we don't leave it. I think these events are amazing at creating awareness, right? These are one-off events. However, what we need is something that brings the people back to it over and over again. I think some of the fellow panelists have pointed out that this must be entertainment. For example, sports is a big driver, right? I come from slightly different viewpoint where I think it has to be something more personal, and that's why I'm spending all my energy on Codec avatars in some ways, and which is basically being able to call your loved ones, right? And be able to come back and engage where something is a step change from what it is right now, which is from 2D video calls to 3D volumetric call where you can feel the presence of the other person in the same space as you.
Right. Anyone care to?
I completely agree with Hitesh. I think there's something that we've experienced just being able to live stream this data, kind of anywhere and actually have two-way communication. I've experienced it myself where I've had someone directly in front of me who's 1,000 miles away from me, and the feeling is just incredible. And so there are moments like that become very personalized for everyone. And sort of how they might experience it. I'd also just kind of call it, the moon landing or Avatar. These things are in a very different time. And I think, today is the way we consume media, the amount of media is very, very different. And so like to create the analogy to the television or to 3D cinema, I think is challenging, just given sort of, everything from TikTok to Instagram and Netflix and headset experiences and broadcast television. There's just so much media today that it's going to be a different thing that I think tips this over.
Yeah, maybe I can also add something. I think the conception of that there will be like a killer application. What was like when VR headsets came new, there was always a question: what is a killer application that gets into all markets? I think there is not the one killer application that will push it, because it's more like people need to understand what is already possible, and this is already like the missing link. Like, when COVID hit, I was working like 10 hours in a VR headset the full day, like outside, because it's more convenient to lie in a chair and stuff like that. And nowadays, when it's late evening, except from today, I play games in VR with friends, and it's like it's a complete different feeling because you create shared experiences, and they are not, of course, they don't look like fully volumetric scanned avatars, but more like animated things. But even those things, you really feel that if you have the presence of real persons around you and you can interact with them, it makes such a huge difference. And just imagining going to virtual shows, I mean, Fortnite is showing it, that they're doing like live event shows there with animated characters and millions of people watching them. It's like a new TV channel, actually, Fortnite. It's like really dominating different markets now. And I think those are potential markets we should look into, how we can bring like live events or like big venues there. And I think also like music events is a very interesting domain because it also attracts a lot of people, and you don't have to be like the challenge with sports where everything has to be live, because the music venue can be pre-recorded in very high quality and it can be a shared experience because the songs and everything is usually the same, and you have maybe some interactive elements. So I think there's a lot of potential already there, and we already have the tech there to do it, but it's finding, I would say, like people with money that say, I want to invest in it, and they can see the vision. This is, I think, one thing that is challenging, because people first need to understand what is already possible with the tech that we have.
Cool. Hitesh?
Yeah, I just want to expand on Sven's point and tackle to one of the questions which was in the further up in the chat around audio. I think if you take what Sven was just saying, right, whether it's music recordings or some of these things, right, and if you bring in the immersive audio, which is sometimes not considered whenever we are talking about volumetric captures and stuff like that, audio is almost like, at least in my experience, I've seen it being considered as a post feature versus being actually recorded in immersive way so that you can experience. I think that can significantly change the accessibility of these. Like, for example, I'll just use a very random example, like Taylor Swift, right? Like, my kids wanted to go see the Taylor Swift concert. There was no way I could make it happen because of time, space, and all the other constraints. But I would have loved to be able to participate in one of these with her, with the right amount of audio, right? To be able to have that engaging. I think those kind of things will create vast adoptions, because it now really expands the reach that these even professional content creators can reach to audiences.
Right. Yeah.
I think
I agree.
Yeah. So like experience like we have now, the quality of the audio is more important than the quality of the video. And I think that will be even more true for volumetric media.
Yeah, it's a shame that volumetric audio is a little underrepresented in this group. So we did purposefully devise our charter to support our colleagues from the audio industry to come and talk about these things and test things together. We did not get that good of a response.
Some in my lab, but they're shy.
Yeah, but we'll need to forcefully engage with them.
Exactly.
Right. Then there was a question from Martin about what we do. What do we really mean by interactive volumetric media? Can it be interactive by itself? But I think we may have responded or replied to that. So I think Sven kind of clarified on that aspect already previously. So hope we can maybe skip that one for the time being. And let's return on the pre-thought questions then. Why don't we start with Bart and Thomas? So we've been talking about the standards role in enabling the media ecosystem, volumetric media ecosystem. What kind of standards do we need?
Okay.
Let's start with Bart.
Yeah, I'll start and then Thomas can just correct everything I say. But so I think we need standards for many things. We need standards for like source formats if they are not already existing, so that it is possible to transfer uncompressed data between companies in an interoperable way. We need to have standards for delivery, and this has to be compressed and efficient, of course. Otherwise, it cannot happen on a large scale. And I think, especially as scenes start to get bigger and you have more cameras, then you cannot stream everything to every single client. So then you also need some adaptivity in the streaming. So you also get some standard aspects there. So I think across the entire chain from capture to playback, you will need standards to achieve this at a large scale. So yeah, quite something to do.
All right, good. Over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, I don't like to talk about standards because standards are just a means to achieve something. I think we need a certain amount of consistency that somebody can deploy, let's say, content or apps in scale, right? So, for example, what we know is there was a large discussion in the ecosystem about the APIs you have on devices. So there were different approaches being done. I think we kind of have harmonized to using Kronos OpenXR as a baseline, Android XR, and so on. So I think device APIs are relevant for both for playback, but for capturing, also for perception, because that allows to port applications across different devices. The second type of standards is basically for professional content. We need to have the whole distribution ecosystem, from content protection, of watermarking, of distribution, and so on and so on. And then there's a necessity of, as I said, the exchange across different ecosystems. I can record with Android devices, with Meta devices, bring it to the iOS ecosystem, and so on and so on. So whether standard is the solution or whether other means are needed, but these are kind of the questions where interoperability is needed. I mean, we can speak more about, do we need delivery, and so on, but maybe come back to this later. What about what is the network requirement? What type of network delivery standards we need, right? Thank you.
All right. Anyone else care to chip in? All right. I think we're running out of time. We have so many questions in the chat and still unanswered, but we'll probably need to finish up here. So I want to thank you, the entire panel, for being such good sport and coming here to share your views for these challenging topics and questions. I think you all did excellent, and I really appreciate you taking the time and coming to talk to us. So thank you. With that, let's move to the wrap-up section. So we have one of our co-chairs, Skip, who has been taking notes for the entire 4 hours and tries to now summarize everything in 10 minutes.
Yeah, that should be
Over to you, Skip.
Pretty big challenge here. Very good. Yes, we're gonna have to rip through this. There's so much great content. First of all, thank you, Lauri. Thank you, Ralph, for making this happen, and everybody that actually contributed to this town hall. This is amazing today. All the guest speakers and actually everybody attending and those that participated in the survey. This was really a Herculean effort, and I think we did an amazing job putting this all together. This is some of my takeaways as I was listening to everything, starting from section to section, from Volucap. The 40 people, also the use for AI usage and AI models, fascinating. Building a Volucap footage of underwater and creating that first underwater Volucapped human. I think that is just next level technology that we, thinking outside the box is the key to that. Also creating the Volucap Go Studio for bringing into environments such as into operating rooms to be able to capture media that we've never thought of being able to capture before. And obviously also keep your eyes out for the feature film Mickey 17 coming out next year. I'm looking forward to that. 40 views, the future of storytelling, capture, build, deliver. That's really what it's all about. Capturing, it's mature, but it's still advancing. Encoding, continuing to evolve, but very usable today. Distributing, do it yourself or find others to help you distribute. Play, there's a multitude of volumetric media players currently out there today. And using volumetric content that's unique, using 2D videos and 3D games, using that volumetric storytelling to bridge that gap and create experiences between the two is a very interesting way to take a look at things. And we heard that quite a bit about storytelling today. Moving on to XD Productions, just a quick overview of them. Private laboratory and 3D volumetric image producer, large studio, Cyberdome, which is 15 meters in diameter and 5 meters high. Challenging motion capture and uses of AI for credible close-ups and details is really what they're all about. Using markerless motion capture, Testing on headsets to populate virtual environments realistic and with realistic characters is one thing that they're looking at as well. And their free viewpoint will be available next year. Accenture, I love this presentation. You have to go back and listen to it if you didn't take detailed notes. I'm not going to read through them all. The big ones that caught my attention: metaverse will be the next massive wave of a digital transformation in the here and now. It's not for tomorrow. It's already here. Every business must be a metaverse business. Be prepared for this transformation. Metaverse is a continuation or a continuum of technologies. 89% of all C-suite execs think that their businesses will be impacted. And millennials are the most interested in these new immersive tech experiences. So, this is interesting to me because as I try to feed back into the business community, why you should be looking at these disruptive technologies, these are key viewpoints that are extremely important. So thank you for that presentation. Trickshot, love this section. And this is a key theme that we kept hearing, taking sports-based volumetric data and create fan-based experiences based on that. 93 of 100 most watched TV programming was based upon sports. So that's a good indicator of where people's eyeballs are at. Sports and entertainment already knows they need to be using or looking at volumetric media. And the whole purpose behind this, it creates that emotional response with the fan. We do a lot of work in sports and entertainment as well, and that is a key factor. Evercoast specializes in delivery end-to-end volumetric capture solutions, smaller scale, easy to deploy. Did lots of cool examples, the Macy's Day Parade case, Ukraine filming Zelensky for his message, key industry markets for Evercoast, sports and broadcasting, entertainment and media, marketing and advertising, immersive education and training, all themes that we kept hearing throughout the day. Lots of phone-based, AR-based activations, sports, conferences, tourism, a lot of cool things there. And the device used will be derived based upon the use case, which I think we all agree. KDDI and Crescent, first commercial volumetric video studio since 2006, built in Tokyo. Volumetric, it's a real-time mesh processing and streaming platform. And their next generation development will include better resolution and markerless motion capture. Moving on to the volumetric media standards landscape, from the VFA, their goal really is to drive the development of volumetric video as the next content creation, compromise of enterprise, production, and community tiered membership levels. Their target use cases: live sports, there we see it again, immersive experiences, SFX and visual production, XR and metaverse. And really the VFA scope is really to capture, process, compress, and playback. That's really the areas that they're continuing to look at. Continuing to build on the existing standards, but also introduce server-side rendering in version 2.0 of their standards. And they're also working on capture specifications, processing pipeline description, best practices, and leveraging infrastructure. MPEG. So coding, compression of audio, picture, multimedia, hypermedia, major standard development are developed for immersive video, MIV. MIV can combine texture, geometry and depth, and extended occupancy in the same packed frame. Point clouds talked about point clouds and mesh clouds. Point clouds are heavy, compression required. Video-based PC, geometry-based PCC, and something new that they're looking at is AI-based point cloud compression. The mesh, which is the preferred method, dynamic mesh coding, video is based on video dynamic mesh coding. Next one, also very interesting with the new codecs, Arcturus, sorry. The codecs AVV allows for a high level of detail, very performant, detail management, and it supports motion vectors. All decoding should happen on the GPU to their viewpoint, replacing video decoding with something tailor-made. Format contents include mesh streams and texture streams and allows for LOD at runtime. A lot to consume in that presentation as well. Almost there. The DVB produced a study mission on volumetric video to see if it was worth pursuing. DVB's definition media capture, processing, delivery, presentation, and end-to-end workflow. And they really looked at what the industry was currently doing, looking at use cases, what do the consumers really want to see, and technology developments and standards and initiatives and how they evolved over time. Next steps for them is to continue to look for scenarios for volumetric media engagement and what's going to happen next. 5G Meg. So scope for their organization is media plus connectivity, production to consumption. The two big projects they're working on, the XR media integration in 5G and the V3C immersive platform. The V3C immersive platform includes a streaming server and an immersive video decoder platform. And once again, there was a GitHub. If you go back and look at the chat, there was a GitHub link and a link to their website. They have a GitHub repository available with tools and projects. Streaming Video Technology Alliance, SVTA, focused on key challenges on delivering high quality video at scale, growing market for immersive experiences, interoperability, content sharing, streaming, and bandwidth challenges. There's a lot to cover there. Their current research topic is correlating XR experiences and trends with emerging XR standards. There is no one size that fits all. Three areas that they concentrate on are non-immersive AR experiences, semi-immersive MR experiences, and deeply immersive VR experiences. And we are out of time. There are some great panel takeaways today here. Lauri, I don't know if you want me to continue or we just distribute this section.
Please do. We can exceed a couple of minutes.
So some key questions that were asked. Some of the most question was asked, most promising media experiences. So sports, once again, constant theme. AI model training, personalized experiences, education and training, travel, medical. And there was a comment made a couple of times, but not really highlighted, but this falls into several categories of disruptive technologies. Anything plus AI really is the future. So volumetric media plus AI really is the future of where these technologies are heading. Key trends for accelerating volumetric media adoption: computer vision, 5G, interactive VM, easier creation of content for the average user. Content is another key element we kept hearing about. Next question is, how do you see volumetric media consumption changing in the next few years? Longer VM content instead of short clips, which obviously with the improvement of technology that will help. And there's also several buckets of the type of derived content out there and kind of helping guide those two buckets. Biggest challenges for the volumetric media industry: ability to access content or have content, end-to-end solutions, amateur versus professional content, interoperability, huge piece, devices on heads, work towards better, faster, cheaper in all aspects. Next question, what should the industry focus on next? Interoperability test, try to get clarity and data to study, because you can't make the next steps until you really know what the needs are. Compression, decompression algorithms, figure out the cart and horse scenario, redesign the ideation and creation process to make sure the person that you're developing for is actually going down the right path. Do you think there needs to be a trigger for volumetric media? Comments were made that needs to be more personal experience, that step change. I love that concept. The killer application that penetrates all markets, and edge technologies, what's directly tied to volumetric media that really enhances the experience, like immersive audio. And last but not least, what kind of standards do we need? From capture to playback, we need consistency, not necessarily standards, but being able to deploy apps at scale, and everything around professional content, and the ability to be able to exchange across ecosystems. And that is my speed reading for today.
Brilliant. I think going forward, we should just have these sessions ahead of time and let you summarize everything in 5 minutes. That was excellent. All right, so that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you everyone for joining in. I hope you had as good time as I had. And there's a little feedback survey running in the Zoom, but other than that, I think we're good to close the call. Again, thank you everyone. Amazing, good stuff.